views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Saturdays or Sundays, SOR Media, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of SOR Media is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised. Are you experienced? Then come own the night with us.
Little brother has taken control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all
Station atop the mountains of British Columbia, live from SOR headquarters. This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, and on Spaced Out Radio on iTunes. You can follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, and on Instagram at Dave Scott SOR, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio.
Brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We will expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized.
It's Thursday, June 7th, Friday, June 8th, if you're on the East Coast or across the pond. And this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. Hope you had a great day and night. I am your host, Dave Scott, live in the Great White North, in the Caribou region, on top of the mountains of central British Columbia, right here at SOR headquarters. We are 150,000 strong nightly on the SOR radio network. You can also check us out on periscope.tv every Monday through Friday night. Our YouTube channel is youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. That's where we hide our archives. Do me a favor, hit the subscribe button on that one for me. And our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we got a plethora of features for you. You can rock out to some Bumblefoot, shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, read up on the encounter online, or watch great videos from UFO Seekers, Contact TV, and so much more. We made it past Hump Day. We're one day away from the weekend, and we're talking UFOs tonight. Make sure you stare up at the sky while you are listening to tonight's show, because Victor Viggiani, our guest, is going to blow your mind. He is one of the best out there, in my opinion, and I'm glad that he's back on this show, because he is an ass kicker when it comes to bringing out the truth, especially north here of the border. As we have one of Canada's most foremost researchers in the UFO phenomena, Victor Viggiani, is back, based out of Toronto, Ontario. He will be speaking in just 2 weeks' time at the Alien Cosmic Expo about how Canada's role in disclosure and UFO research should be defined. And really, It's a dark secret up here, still with very few discussing the magnitude of this program. Victor's company, Zland Communications News Network, is the first and only Canadian news service to report on and provide coverage on a wide range of issues dealing with the UFO ET issue and the geopolitical and societal implications of an ET presence. Victor, my friend, I will also be seeing you in Vancouver on June 30th. I'm very excited to have you back on the show, my friend. How you been doing?
Just great. Just great to be with you, Dave, and what an inspiring introduction.
Well, thank you, my friend. What have you been up to? Playing with UFOs, aliens? What's going on?
Oh, recently, just getting set because I'm leaving for Portugal tomorrow with some friends for about 2.5 weeks. So I'm going to be gone for 10 days. And the last 7 or 8 days have been sort of hectic in getting things ready and getting Euros and all of that. And also preparing for the Alien Cosmic Expo. My role there as an MC and as a presenter, and also putting together the presentation for the Architects of the New Paradigm, as you mentioned, in Vancouver at the end of the month. So it's been a mishmash, and but it's been exciting, and just following all the new news that's coming out, and trying to follow it all and put it all together and see what kind of fit the puzzles all express themselves. All the pieces are out there, just a matter of getting all of them together in the right spot and assembling them. And they're slowly coming together, believe it or not. And we're hoping that these two conferences can really help educate the public to put the pieces of the puzzle together too. So we're high expectations is what it is.
Do you still enjoy it, Victor? Or is it just a love of the frustration that keeps you going?
You know what? It's a really good question, Dave. The quick answer is yes, I do love it. I do. It just keeps me going. But I must admit that a certain level of frustration sets in, especially when things happen in rapid succession and the expectations become high to among the public or the people that depend on the kind of information I provide them with. They want answers. They want to have someone put things together for them. And so many researchers throughout the world, be it in exopolitics, in France or Portugal or Spain and even in the States, these researchers are they're bearing the brunt of the high expectation that these people have to provide the answers to those that are interested in this problem. And it can't always be done that easily for some strange reason. Everybody has a different way of putting things together. And that frustrates me a lot because the number of people that are involved in this phenomenon worldwide all have a different perspective on this. And they try to present their points of view, which is logical. I mean, it's the only point of view that they really have, so that's not unexpected. But the frustration that I face is the lack of unanimity or consolidation, and the coalition's not there yet, as far as I'm concerned. And I think if the general public is ever going to believe or understand or absorb or confirm or accept the acknowledgement of this whole issue, the people in the UFO research community will have to somehow figure out a way to come together in some sort of coalition and make their case together, not just one person at a time. That's one of the things that I'm attempting to do, is being a facilitator to bring people together with the news that I put out, in trying to absorb the information, first of all, on my part, and then get it out there and have it represent not just my point of view or some other researchers' point of Nick Pope or Steve Bassett or any of these, Richard Dolan, not just to express their point of view, but to see the commonalities that are in the work that they do, and thus providing some sort of overall unanimity in the kinds of things that we present as researchers and journalists to the general public. And that's one of the things, it's one of them, there are several others, that's going to convince people that this message is worth listening to. So in answer to your question, I do enjoy it, but it's becoming more and more frustrating as the issues become more pointed. And this thing called disclosure or acknowledgement, we'll talk about that later, I hope, is on the horizon. but we're just not hitting the ball out of the park just yet. And I think we have to come together as a community of researchers to do it in the proper way so the general public really understands what's really going on, not just the biases that people have.
I want to ask you a question that I asked Ryan Stacy from MUFON Canada on Monday, and I disagreed with his answer, and I told him as much. But in Canada here, Victor, we have some of the most top-notch researchers in the world on this subject. Yet, as a whole, I don't feel our country, as citizen by citizen, takes this subject very seriously. Ryan tended to disagree with that, but I'm like looking around and saying, where? I don't see people talking UFOs. I don't see people, really retweeting them unless they're into this sort of stuff. It's not everyday conversation for a lot of Canadian people as it is down in the United States. What's your opinion on that?
Well, no, I tend to agree with what you're saying. It's not something that people talk about over the breakfast table or the dinner table with any kind of regularity. Or a lot of times I'll go to restaurants. I'll be at a gathering in a restaurant. There's 4 or 5 of us sitting in the restaurant, and we all have sort of an urge to talk about this whole issue because we're meeting for some reason or another. And if there's, if you're at a bar or pub or whatever it happens to be, and I always make the point, I said, guys, and ladies and gentlemen that's sitting at the table, I can bet you $1,000 that there's not one other table in this restaurant that are talking about what we're talking about. I can almost guarantee it. And I would venture to say that I'd be right. So I kind of sense that the general public really doesn't talk about this. Now, I'm not quite sure if they take it seriously or not. That's another question altogether. The kind of work that I have done in the past, I work at a golf course here in Mississauga, just outside of Toronto, and there are a number of people that are there, both patrons and people that work at the golf course, and they have gotten word. Some of them have gotten word that I'm into this thing because I've worked there for almost 17 years, and they say, Victor, I understand. I heard you on some radio program, or I saw you on TV. One of the interviews that you did with CBC. And what's this stuff about UFOs? Are you serious about this stuff? And I said, well, you're darn right, I'm serious about it. And they say, you know what? That's something that really interests me too. And so there is, or there are certain individual types or characteristics among the general public. 1 out of 10, 5 out of 10, maybe, and not even that have some sort of a kernel of interest in this or curiosity. And then there's another cadre of people that have absolutely no interest in it at all and do not understand why the issue is important. And it's almost like a DNA thing. There are believers and there are non-believers, and never the twain shall meet. So in response to your question, I think there is a bit of a thirst out there or understanding that this is an interesting and very curious phenomenon. But some of them do not, most people don't understand what's really important about this issue. It's not about the lights in the sky and how these things bebop in and out of our airspace. It's about the geopolitical implications of why it's important. And that really isn't something that the general public have yet been able to digest, the geopolitical importance of this whole issue to the entire planet, to the human family. And once people really understand, maybe we can get into this a little bit later, but why this issue is important to the human family. What does this whole off-world civilization availability to our sensibilities, what does it mean to us as a human family? And these aren't questions that the media are asking, and these aren't questions that people, on the subway or on a bus or at any given family gathering, they're not the questions these people are asking. So I think we've got a lot of work to do in order to bring the issue forward to people and then have some sort of understanding presented that has them understand that we are on the threshold. This is really important, Dave. We are on the threshold of the next step of our evolution as a human family and as a species. And that's the whole thing as far as I'm concerned. I've often struggled with, what's the most definitive thing that I can say about this issue? And I think that's what it is. When you look down the road, We are in fact on the threshold of the next step of our evolution as a species. And that's a long way away from believing in, these lights that flit in and out of the sky. The discussion has to be extended beyond lights in the sky into what they might be, where they might be from, and then what are the implications. So it's an extremely complex issue that most people just, quite frankly, Dave, just don't have the time to get into. And that's what I think our role is, and that's what your role is, and what you're doing and what I'm doing, is to bring about some sort of collective understanding that this is a major issue for us as a species.
Well, let me ask you this then, because as a Canadian, I'm trying to figure out what's our vector, Victor, in this situation. What's our role?
Well, this is a fantastic question for several reasons. And what I boil it down to, Dave, is I would imagine it has a lot to do with the nature of our government, number one, okay, is the kind of democratic system that we operate up here in Canada. And number two, the kind of media operations that go on up here compared to what's happening in the United States. As you probably well know, the American government is a certain characteristic. And I'm not just talking about the current administration, but I'm talking about the what would you call it? It's been concretized. It's sort of the solidity of the American system. They just will not let outside information into their system that will change the system in a really intrusive manner. Any information that will drastically change how the United States democracy operates will not be something that the House of Representatives or the President or the Congress or the Senate, they will allow. There will be no really, really deep change within the American system. And the same thing goes for the American media. The American media is extremely powerful, and they want things their own way. And nothing is going to change the perspective of that, unless this issue is something so monumental like an asteroid or some other thing that's going to be threatening the planet. They will go on their merry way in a profit motive manner, and the American government will go on in its own way as a global controller in terms of a cyclical war economy. That's all they're interested in it. They want to put their economy out there so that they can control the perspective of how other powers on the planet understand who they are. Now, take a look at Canada with respect to those two issues. Totally different, completely different. Our media is much more amorphous, and I hesitate to use the word, but it might be naive. It's not as sophisticated as the American media, and it's not as controlled by governmental factions up here in Canada. And the other part of that, too, is the same thing with the government. Canada has no interest in becoming a dominant world power and saying to the rest of the world, take it or leave it, So there's those two factions, those two characteristics of our government and our media make the Canadian theater or the Canadian identity about this issue ripe for disclosure. Because the media, and I'm gradually figuring this out one little bit at a time. And I will talk to you about in a few minutes about the CBC thing that I've done with the program The Current on the CBC, and also what we've done with the Minister of Defense and with the Prime Minister. The inroads there are a little bit more accessible than they are in the States, and that accessibility has to be exploited. And that's what I'm trying to do with Zland Communications, is exploit the media and exploit the inroads within the government that will allow this sort of amorphous, less than sophisticated Canadian identity to allow it to absorb the potential of acknowledgement of what this issue is. I'm not talking about disclosure just yet. I'm talking about acknowledgement. And as soon as we, up here in Canada, the researchers, people like, Grant Cameron and myself, and you, Chris Stiles, Stanton Friedman, God bless his soul. I mean, he's worked so hard over so many years to bring this forward. And I think it's something that we have a responsibility to pursue. And in my opinion, Dave, I think we have a really good chance up here of having some sort of acknowledgement rather than disclosure right away. We can, if we play our cards right, get the media to acknowledge what's going on. We're doing a pretty darn good job of it, but it's not there yet. And then in turn, have our government respond to the way the media will put this information out. So those are the two things that I see as sort of our role in helping this issue become a global issue. And I think the Canadian media is a global entity too. I mean, we're well respected throughout the world in terms of what our media is all, especially with the CBC. And there's a lot of problems with the CBC. It's a bit of it could be considered a bit of a stuffed shirt organization. But let me tell you, there are some fine journalists at the CBC, and there are some fine journalists at the Toronto Star who are in fact open to this issue. And I know, in fact, they are. That is, I know at least 4 people in both those two medias who are extremely interested in this, but for some reason they don't want to stick their little finger out the door and take a chance and start pounding on their computer keyboard to say, listen, folks, we got to pay attention to this issue. They're not there just yet.
I have to hold some reservations here because, honestly, I don't think with the Canadian status, and I don't want to get too political here because we're not a political show, but with the status of the Prime Minister's office right now in Canada and some of the buffoonery that Justin Trudeau has caused over the last year, whether, it's the scandals in India, whether it's paying off terrorists, the opening the borders to absolutely anyone and everyone who breathes. I don't think that whether it's this Liberal government that is in there now or whoever gets elected in the next election in 2019, I don't see anybody in government wanting to even touch this subject, knowing the mess that is going to need to be cleaned up. And to regular Canadians, everyday mainstream Canadians outside of us, that's more important right now because this guy's handing out money to everyone in the world except taking care of his own.
Well, I don't disagree with you. No, not at all. All I'm saying about the government is that it is different from the American the characteristics of the American government. I think our government is extremely naive in so many different ways. And I'm not talking about administrations, the liberal administration or the conservative, just our government as a whole. The parliamentary system is extremely exploitable with respect to this issue. So how do we exploit that vulnerability? And my response to that question is we use the Canadian media to blast this thing open because there are people within the Canadian media who are very, very open to the issue. And I'll take, for example, the CBC. And if you don't mind, I can tell the story about the CBC.
Go right ahead.
Well, this is a fine example of forcing government to recognize something that the media puts up, and it happens all the time. A good example is I use this example all the time: the issue of child abuse. This issue of child abuse, as a principal, as an elementary school principal for 35 years, I went through an extremely harsh transition from this issue of child abuse not being recognized in the early 60s and the 70s when I was in administration, and no one spoke about it. There is no way there's no mechanism for children to come forward to talk about that, mom and dad or dad hits me with the belt every morning because I don't eat my breakfast. And he comes to school with bruises and no one says anything about it. That went on for decades. It's been going on for, since almost time immemorial. Children were beaten by their parents and abused in other ways by family members. So what happened in the mid 80s is this huge transition within the media about exposing the issue of child abuse. And as soon as the media got a hold of this whole thing, all hell broke loose. Schools had nurses and doctors and psychologists coming into the school board and saying, listen, we have to do something about child abuse. And as a result of that, different presentations were made in schools, and children were allowed to understand they could talk about this thing. And a good example was I was at St. Matthew's School in the city of Toronto. We had a presentation by a theater group that used puppetry to I'll get back to the point in a minute if you bear with me. They used puppetry to show examples of how adults would abuse children. And the message was it's okay to tell other people that you're being hurt by your family. And this school had 550 kids in it, Dave, and that same day we had 27 disclosures after it. We didn't know what to do. These kids were coming forward and talking about physical abuse, emotional abuse, and sexual abuse. And it just made our heads spin. 27 children the first day. And that was just the first day. And as a result, psychiatrists came in to deal with the children and what we're going to do. Children, the registry was brought into play, where names were put on the registry, and they were, in some cases, these children were taken out of homes. So the example of child abuse coming forward, and the reason that it was the media that did it. It wasn't the school boards necessarily. It was the media that put this stuff out. So once the public understands that the media is serious about a specific issue, and you could almost pick any other issue too. Do you remember the issue of asbestos, for example? I mean, it was all over the newspapers. Okay, why? It was because the media picked it up and made it something that everyone could talk about. Now, the UFO ET issue, as far as I'm concerned, Dave, is exactly the same. Now, it has much bigger consequences and is much more intrusive in terms of the amount of political change and sociological change that it could bring about. And maybe that's why we need to work much more diligently to bring it about, because it is a more difficult issue for people to understand. But once it does, once this thing breaks through the glass ceiling of the media resistance and the government resistance, and even the public resistance, I think we're going to have as I said earlier, all hell will break loose as soon as they figure out, what do you mean we're not alone in the cosmos? What do you mean these things called UFOs just come and go with impunity? They move at what, light speed? Did they move at interdimensionally? No, that can't be. Well, folks, here's the rest of the story. And it goes on from there. So if the media does its job properly, and it does it all the time, Watergate's another great example. If the media does its job, the government has to respond. They will be forced to respond.
I get that, and I know the medium is the message. I mean, we can all go back to Marshall McLuhan back in the 60s for coming up with that most famous phrase for every journalist to follow. You know, the problem is what we have here. If I take our audience, and we're about 75% of our audience is American, only about 18%, if that, is Canadian. All right. So when I look at our audience being mostly American, they don't trust the media down there. They think the media is in some sort of cahoots because they don't have a fair play law in their media. Their media choose sides. We see CNN is more Democratic than Fox News, and Fox News being more Republican. Well, up here, we're starting to see that. We're seeing Global go a little bit more to the liberal Democratic side, whereas CBC, even though they're getting their funding from the liberals, they tend to lean off the liberalism and go a little bit more conservative, even though they don't give the conservative any props, because last time the conservatives were in power, they tried to cut the CBC funding. So there is this big battle in between right now on how does someone trust the media, especially with a topic as sensitive as UFOs.
Oh, that's the battle. It's a battle of worldviews, Dave, and John Mack made that very clear in many of his lectures. This really has nothing to do with belief systems in terms of do you believe or not. It has to do with how we operate and view the world. If we can put forward with the wisdom that we have within the UFO research community, if that wisdom can portray itself in a professional manner, as it was portrayed on the CBC, The Current, and with respect to the Pentagon release, Anna Maria Tremonti on the CBC and The Current did an absolutely spectacular job in covering this issue on December 20th of 2017. A totally unexpected transition for Anna Maria Tremonti, because she's kind of a cautious individual, but I'll tell you something, she's a real go-getter. She's a great journalist. And what happened was with that story, and this kind of proves my point about how amorphous and how unsophisticated some people within the media are, because they haven't done any research on this at all. Zero. Less than zero. But what happened was the Pentagon, and if your listeners are familiar with it, the Pentagon released the 3 videos of the jets getting a hold on radar and visually of these 3 UFOs, a Tic Tac video and the other 2, and they released these videos. Luis Alessandro came out forward and he said, we've got these videos, and there's been this program going on from 2007 to 2012. It's been funded by $22 million on the initiative of a senator. I believe the man's name was Senator Reid, and we've got Robert Bigelow involved. And the Pentagon came out and releases information about this UFO information and the UFO investigation program. Now, that was a huge wave. It was probably one of the biggest releases by any governmental agency ever within the American political system, ever, and the military system. So you have to ask a couple of questions. Why is the Pentagon releasing this kind of stuff? We can get into that in a moment. But the fact of the matter is, when I heard about the release, I wrote to Anna Maria Tremonti at the Current. And I said, Ms. Tremonti, it was in an email, this issue has been brought forward. Here's what the substance of it is. It's something that I believe the CBC has to cover, and it's your responsibility to cover something that an important military organization, agency like the Pentagon, is freely releasing to its people. And it has to do with unidentified flying objects and the confusion around it, and a $22 million UFO investigation program over 5 years. That is a story. So I sent her an email on December the 18th, okay? And within the next day, I got a call from the producer of The Current, Josh Bloch. And he asked me, what is this stuff all about? And I said, it's quite simple, Josh. The U.S. Pentagon has been investigating UFOs for a 5-year period, and there's a good possibility it's still going on. The organizer of it and the lead administrator quit because of a conflict within the organization. But the fact of the matter is, he admitted that $22 million of the American taxpayers' money was put forward to investigate UFOs over 5 years. That's a story. And he said, I agree with you. And he said, who can talk about it? I said, well, I could, but I think there are more people there are other people that are more qualified than I am to at least express a view on this. And that's as far as that went. Okay? So what happened on the 20th of December, after the next day when I spoke with Mr. Bloch, the producer, they put this program on The Current. And The Current is nationwide. It goes from the West Coast to the East Coast every single day. It's the most listened to investigative program in Canada. And they covered it for 20 minutes. Nick Pope was on. And unfortunately, they had another individual from SETI on there, which they try to balance it journalistically. But the fact of the matter is, Anna Maria Tremonti was asking some really pointed questions about the whole idea of extraterrestrials, UFOs. What do they do? What do they look like? Why is the Pentagon doing this? And these are the kinds of questions that were being asked on a national Canadian investigative radio program. I think that's a move forward. I think it's a big step forward. And I'm going to be talking to Anna Maria Tremonti in a very specific way just before the ACE conference, inviting her to continue to do that kind of work. And we'll see what kind of results we get. See, this is what I'm getting at, is when the media portrays this stuff, but the problem with it is, Dave, they don't do it consistently. They treat it as the carousel of the news cycle. They float something up one day, and the next day, it's nothing. It's like in the newspapers. They put something in the newspaper that's really important, then the next day they're wrapping fish with it. It's a one-issue day, and that's the way the media operates. So what we have to do is get them to deal with this UFO issue on a consistent basis. And what the Current did last December 20th, I think, was a benchmark in Canadian radio and Canadian journalism with respect to the UFO issue.
There are a lot of people who look at Canada as a friendly country, but a little bit of a joke of a country when it comes to anything on the world stage, because we don't fund our military. We don't really do peacekeeping missions anymore. Sure, we help out countries who are in need of aid, and I think that is absolutely fantastic. However, when it comes to the serious matters of trying to make things good and moving forward in advancement, we're looking like that redheaded stepchild, pardon the pun, in regards to the way we are treated by a number of countries. So many countries have passed us by. What really could Canada's role be in any sort of disclosure program? Because with the big boys south of us in the United States, and they got all the fun toys to play with, then you combine in what's happening in Russia, in China, Japan, India is now making a run at the moon. It seems like everybody is moving forward, and the Canadian government, when it comes to technology and focusing on exports rather than imports or building our own, seem to be falling behind. And I don't see how that could help out any type of disclosure.
Well, you've got to. I think Canada has always had this sort of international flavor to it, rather than being an isolationist country. And I think that is still a very strong perspective among most people within the world. I know that Canada has not necessarily taken the lead in other military ventures and so on and so. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm glad we're not. We don't use nuclear. We don't have a nuclear arsenal. We've put that aside as it just doesn't work. Okay, being a nuclear nation it's almost a Neanderthal. Nuclear weapons are archaic, and they are part of a system, a cyclical war system, or a threat of a cyclical war system that is an infectious thing within the planet and over the planet. We're in a very difficult position as a species, Dave, and I think the only perspective that you can portray internationally is a perspective that you have to be a conciliator and a facilitator, rather than a saber-rattling country like the United States or like Russia or like China. Those kinds of perspectives are looked upon, and if you take a look at the bigger picture, okay, all of the things that you're describing, as far as I'm concerned, Dave, are minuscule with respect to the cosmic reality of what the extraterrestrials see and view and how they perceive us as a species. And once that we can at least portray some sort of civility, or at least collective understanding about who we are as a species, as a human family, and I think that is what the extraterrestrials are waiting for. And I don't have any kind of insight or inside information about that. But one of the reasons I don't think they're manifesting themselves in the way that they could or should is because we are still in a state of internal deadlock. We are, and I mention it all the time, we are in an oil economy, a cyclical war economy, and all that it matters is strength and political influence. Borders are the key thing that keep us tied into all of those things. I believe borders are the worst possible venture that countries can have to allow themselves to become a consolidated species rather than separate entities. And one of the problems is whatever these extraterrestrials are, whoever they are, I can bet you dollars to donuts, it's my opinion, that borders on their planets don't exist. They don't have. That's not the perspective that they would use. And a lot of the abductees, the experiencers, talk about that kind of thing. They talk about where these beings come from, and they talk about the kinds of things that these entities, these extraterrestrials, portray. And there's no such thing as an economy. There's no such thing as money. There's no such thing as borders. And we're getting this directly from abductees. Now, take that with a grain of salt or believe it. It doesn't matter. But the fact of the matter is the messages are coming down that these extraterrestrials do not function the way we do. So then what does that mean for us as a species? And all the things you just mentioned, tie into this competitive notion of one country over another. Get what you can get as fast as you can get it. And if you don't get it the way you want it, you bust open their borders and you take what you want. That's what we are as a species. And we've proven that century after century. And that has to change. So that's the bigger picture as to why I think Canada has a way of portraying that sort of that coalition kind of perspective rather than this militaristic control, influence, and dominancy over other countries. And just perhaps that attitude might be a little bit more capable of dealing with this idea of disclosure and getting that information out and saying, listen, we have to be different as a species. We have to be different. And once that happens, I believe that disclosure will become a whole lot more palatable for people. But I think there's a lot of work to be done on that issue.
Do you think then that even with Canada's vast experience with UFOs, that there is a common placement that people are ready for it up here? People are expectant of it happening. We've seen Shag Harbor. We've seen the incident in Manitoba that's turned into a brand new coin that we are going to talk about here momentarily. In 1967, I found it very ironic on this show a couple of years ago when I had Paul Hellyer on, that I didn't believe him when he told me that he is the one who actually opened the grand opening in 1967 of the UFO landing pad in St. Paul, Alberta, and yet at that point he was trying to pawn off me that, oh no, I'd never heard of UFOs back then. I never heard of it. BS, Paul. BS. You just don't want to say that you believed in it while you were sitting in office. You don't want to besmirch yourself.
I'll stop you right there, bud. I'll stop you right there. Okay. I can say it factually that, Paul might have done what he did with the UFO landing pad, but I have documents, letters written by Paul Hellyer that indicate a response to citizens about UFOs. And at the time, and I don't have the letters in front of me, but since you bring it up, I can speak to it. He made excuses. There's no information that we have in the Canadian government that anything like UFOs are real. This is what he said in letters. Not only he, but a number of ministers of defense said that. And when I asked Paul about this, when I first got to know him back in 2005, he stated categorically to me that in all of his work under the within the Lester B. Pearson government, with the Trudeau government, Pierre Trudeau, this information wasn't even on the radar at the time. He had no interest in following it. He had no perspective on it at all. He just was very busy. His whole perspective was he was too busy consolidating all of the armed forces, the Air Force, the Army, and the Navy. And that was something that he did. And he really did not have any interest in UFOs. And then what happened, would you like me to proceed into the story about Paul?
Yeah, let's get into it.
The thing was, at the time, I'm talking 2005, okay? And I knew about Paul. I knew about Paul Hellyer in the past. I grew up with him as a politician. I remember him being elected in Trinity Bellwoods for the very first time, the youngest member of Parliament ever, as a matter of fact, and then moving into the government and almost defeating Pierre Trudeau at the Liberal convention when Trudeau ran for the prime minister position. He could have been our prime minister, but Trudeau beat him out at the time. In any case, in 2005, I was doing a radio program with Errol Bruce Knapp on CFRB in Toronto here, and I had done the program for about eight or 9 years with Errol. We interviewed everybody. There's a lot of the current people that are still, Paula Harris, Steve Bassett, all Richard Dolan, and the interviews were going rampantly over CFRB, and we had 2 hours of programming on the largest AM radio station in Canada at the time. Strange Days Indeed was the name of the program. In any case, Errol and I are doing a program one Saturday evening from 11 o'clock to 1. We finished the program, and we're both very tired, and it was a long evening, and I'm packing up my things, and the operator on the other side of the glass says, "Victor, there's a call for you on line 1." And I said, I'm sorry, I'm too tired. No, I think you need to take this call. I said, fine. I picked up the phone, and this fellow, and I'll call him Peter, okay? Hello, Victor, my name is Peter. I need to tell you something. I said, what, Peter? He said, you need to talk to Paul Hellyer. And I said, why? And the name just rung a bell. It came out of the blue. It had no reference to UFOs at the time at all. I said, why? And he said, you just need to talk to him because he's beginning to understand something about the UFO issue that I heard you talking about tonight, because Peter was listening to the program. I said, Peter, okay, I'll give him a call. Could you send me an email about his telephone number? Yada, yada, yada. Fine. He did that. So I think it was about a week later. I said, maybe I'll give this guy Paul Hellyer a call. Okay. So, at the time, a friend of mine and I were planning the symposium at the Convocation Hall in the University of Toronto, okay? And we had invited for Stan Friedman, Steve Bassett, Paula Harris, and who else? Richard Dolan, okay? So there's 4 speakers. And we were planning it for the middle of December, or September of that same year, 2005. And I said, okay, I'll give Paul Hellyer a call. And I said, Mr. Hellyer, Peter, your good friend who helped you in your campaign, said that you might be interested in UFOs. And I said, are you? What's going on? And he said, well, Mr. Viggiani, yes, I'm in the middle of reading a book. I said, what book are you in the middle of reading? He said, The Day After Roswell by Philip J. Corso. I said, oh, why are you reading that book? I said, well, someone in Quebec sent it to me and recommended that I read it because it's something that I might be interested in. I said, what do you think of it? He said, well, I don't know what to think of it just yet. I said, oh, if you are interested in UFOs and you do have something to say about it, would you be interested in being our keynote speaker in September in 2005, that the same year? He said, oh, no, I could never do that. No, there's no possible way I would ever do that. I said, okay, finish reading the book, and I'll give you a call in 2 or 3 weeks. He said, fine. So I let a couple of weeks go by, and I called him back. I said, Mr. Hellyer, it's Victor Viggiani calling back again. Did you finish reading the book? He said, yes, I did. And I said, oh, what do you think? He said, I am almost completely convinced that what's happening here is real. And I said, why? What changed your mind? Was it the book? He said, well, it was the book, but my nephew said to me, once you finish reading the book, call this general in the United States, a retired general in the United States, and he has information about it. And Paul had no idea who the general was. Call this general and ask the general. As a matter of fact, I think there was 2 calls. He asked the general about the book, The Day After Roswell by Philip J. Corso. He said, what's this book all about? The general told him. He said, Mr. Hellyer, everything in that book is true and more. And that, when Paul told me, he said, that convinced me that I need to come out and say something about this. So I said to him, well, do you want to become, would you like to be the keynote speaker at our symposium? He said, yes. And the rest is history. That's the first time he came forward when he said UFOs are as real as the airplanes that fly over your head. And that began a whole process of him becoming the first cabinet minister in North America to come forward to speak rationally and authentically about the UFO issue.
Okay, so I have a couple questions about that and listening to you, Victor. And first off, I just want to apologize to our viewers on Periscope. For some reason, we are having a lot of stalling issues on there tonight, so I am trying to work on it while Victor is talking, so please bear with us. We're getting a new computer built literally as we're speaking right now. Amy Martin is building our new computer as we speak, so hopefully by tomorrow night we will no longer have those problems. So I do apologize for that. But getting back to Paul Hellyer for a moment here. Mm-hmm. Okay, if I take what you say verbatim, that he knew nothing of these while he was in cabinet, where did he get his information from outside of a book saying that these are real? Did he not have any access to internal files where maybe the Canadian military was looking into this subject?
He may have looked at those files, but I doubt it. But what happened was, once he committed himself to becoming involved in the whole issue after September of 2005, He and I had a long conversation, and he asked me, he said, where else can I go and who else can I speak to about this issue? I need to know more. I need to know what's going on. And at the time, I had no idea. I had no idea about the 9,500 UFO files that were in the Canadian Library and Archives Canada database. I didn't discover that until 2009. So, and neither did he. He had no idea about it. So he asked me, who can I go to speak to about this issue? And I gave him a list of people who I thought would be key to him understanding a variety, an array of perspectives on this whole issue. And one of them was Shirley MacLaine, okay? And the others were Richard Dolan, Steve Bassett, Linda Moulton Howe. Oh my goodness, I think Nick Pope was one of them too. And he went out of his way to speak to, meet with, and go and meet with the different places that he met them and speak to them about this whole issue to try to gather some sort of sense beyond the book The Day After Roswell as to what that all might be. And he never indicated to me at all, Dave, that he had any kind of access to files before that or while he was Minister of Defense. And I even asked him, what about NORAD reports? No, I had no idea. This is not something that came across my desk.
I'm still not buying it.
Well, Paul is you don't want to fool around with Paul. I mean, this man has integrity, and he is one of the most authentic individuals that I've ever met. And when Paul says something, he means it. And I would never question his statement that he did not have any kind of he may have seen reports about it, but these things just come and go across your desk, and you make no sense of them because they're not really important to you at the time. That may have happened, and I understand that the I'm not sure it was the Pearson cabinet or the Trudeau cabinet, that these things were discussed within cabinet at some point in time during these cabinet meetings, but it was just one of those things that people just didn't make any sense of at the time, and it was not something they took seriously. So, as often is the case with political people, with members of parliament are totally ignorant of all of this. And I would even imagine that very few prime ministers have any idea of the kind of information that's within the 9,500 UFO files. Intelligence Committee reports signed by Wilbert Smith and by a number of other people who were intensely involved in this. This all went on way beyond any kind of MP knowledge about UFOs. I can guarantee that for a fact, because none of them knew it. And if they did know it, they didn't say anything about it. They took absolutely no action about it. And if you read the 9,500 files, and I've gone through almost 6,000 of them, and I'll tell you, it's pretty boring reading. But once you come across an intelligence report that says we have to play down UFOs at all costs, just like the American Air Force, it states it. And these things were going on in 1952, 53, 54. And there are other documents that talked about what do we do if one of these things makes contact with land? Who do we report to? What do we do? And I can guarantee you again that very few, if any, MPs got those kinds of things across their desk.
I know my MP here, I have talked to her about it, and the information that I brought forward to you regarding the RCMP and NORAD, she was really not interested in hearing about it. Not interested at all. And she's a conservative MP.
Of course. Well, irrespective of being conservative, liberal, or whatever happens to be, these people are not interested in that kind of stuff at all. But when you take a look at the kind of information you and I have been talking about in terms of the RCMP, RCMP. I mean, there's a document an RCMP document that I have put forward to the Minister of Defense. The title of it is UFO Found. It's on the website at MUFON Canada. It's clear. It's got the RCMP logo on it. It's signed UFO Found. It says it blatantly. So, I mean, what does that mean? Where does it go? Does it just get hidden and put in somebody's drawer? Somehow, Library and Archives Canada got a hold of it, put it in their database, and let people ferret through those 9,000 files to find it. And I did. And not many people do that, David. I can count on one hand, 2 fingers maybe, of the people who have gone through these 9,000 files. And MPs do not do this kind of thing. So I can understand why she's reluctant to do that, because this is something that researchers do. MPs don't do this, especially with devastating information like this. RCMP involved in investigating Shag Harbor, having divers go down there and look at the yellow foam and following this thing in the water, and RCMP making reports on it. My goodness, that's just poppycock. An MP would never believe it. They've got to look at the files. They've got to look at the reports, and they are pages long. And that's one of the problems with our system is the political entities, the elected individuals, have too much else on their mind besides basic stupidity, if I could use that word in a strong sense. They just, all they want to do is just sit in that seat and get reelected the next time. And anything that they would put forward that would minimize their chances of being reelected, like UFOs, they don't talk about. Or want to talk about.
We got about 45 seconds here before we have to go to break, Victor, on that topic. And I can understand that. And I don't want you to answer this just yet. We'll get to this question after the break. But then who in Canada, if the government doesn't know and our politicians find this topic absolutely irrelevant, who knows about it? Who knows about this? Are these files just sitting at CSIS? And for our American listeners, CSIS would be the equivalent of your CIA. Mm-hmm. Or are they sitting in some Defense Department file room, much like Luis Elizondo apparently used to run? And does Canada have a Luis Elizondo? But we'll get into that. We'll get into that with Victor right after the break. Victor Viggiani is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. His website, zlandcommunications.org. He is one of Canada's premier researchers who will be speaking at the Alien Cosmic Expo, June 22nd to 24th in Toronto, Ontario. So if you're on the East Coast or you just want a little bit of a getaway, head on over to Alien Cosmic Expo. It is definitely worth it. Some of the greatest speakers on this field are going to be there. We'll be back with more Spaced Out Radio and Victor Viggiani right after this.
Find your escape where time has no limits. It's about living today and cherishing the heritage of yesterday. A spirit of adventure for what is new, with the nostalgia of the past. Your timepiece is a reflection of who you are. Life surrounded by beauty from the world around us to the soul within. EscapeWatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
The freedom to post what you want, when you want. That's the social media freedom you need. Social Media Freedom is the free app in your app store. No need to worry about going to jail or being shadow banned any longer. It's the freedom to say what you feel. The freedom to know Big Brother isn't watching. It's the way social media is supposed to be. Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free. Download from your app store today.
Coming September 28th to the 30th, it's our first annual Caribou Paracon, put on by Spaced Out Radio and the Canadian Society of Questers. 3 days of paranormal, supernatural, and spiritual knowledge in the beautiful 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Tickets are $150 Canadian for the event, being held at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Come watch our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Lorian Fenton, David Weatherly, Ross Allison, and more. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
Hey Space Travelers, it's Joe Roop, your host of Spaced Out Saturdays. Come join me as we explore the realms of the paranormal, the esoteric, and everything in between every Saturday night at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. You know the truth is out there. Don't get caught sleepwalking. Come join Spaced Out Saturdays. That's every Saturday night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, right here on spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, this is Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm going to take you for a ride every Sunday night on Spaced Out Sundays. I'm going to set up your week with some strange tales from across North America, from psychic readings, Sasquatch, UFOs, to the most haunted locations. Come join me at spacedoutradio.com starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, and let's get weird together. I'd love for you to join me. Spaced Out Sundays at spacedoutradio.com.
365 days a year, we're in the field, investigating UFO sightings, talking to alien abductees, and visiting secret military locations like Area 51. We're UFO Seekers, official partner of Spaced Out Radio. Follow our daily search for the truth at ufoseekers.com or like us on social media. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spacedoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spacedoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Heading to Vancouver and looking for some great nightlife? The Moose Vancouver is the place to be. Catch a game on one of the big screens or just come rock out to your favorite 80s and 90s hair bands. Great food starting at $6.95. The Moose Vancouver is open until 2 a.m. nightly. It's easy to find near the corner of Nelson and Granville. The Moose Vancouver is the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Want to learn more about aliens, cover-ups, conspiracies, cryptids, and the paranormal? All you have to do is tune in S4 as we take over Spaced Out Radio Night, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, each and every Saturday night, right after Spaced Out Saturdays. Hi there, this is Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. Join me, Corey Ruiz, and friends as we discuss the hot topics of the night. It's fun, entertaining, and as dark as the night. Find us at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Do you want to know what's really going on in your world? Do you have questions about who you can trust in the mainstream media? Then look no further than the Rebel Planet. Come get the straight answers right here at spacedoutradio.com. Join me, Jamie Sexton, creator of Rebel Planet News, as I fill you in on the stories behind the stories. All you truth seekers, be sure to tune in to Rebel Planet on spacedoutradio.com the third Thursday of every month.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to the second hour of Spaced Out Radio. Tonight I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, Richard Dolan joins us as we are going to continue the disclosure talk, heading into Alien Cosmic Expo, June 22nd through the 24th in Toronto, Ontario. And it'll be a great show indeed, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on the SOR Radio Network, including the Fringe.fm, and everybody on Periscope. Hello, I know we're having some troubles with Periscope tonight. I promise the new computer is being built by Amy right now, so once that's built, we get that hopefully set up tomorrow, that Periscope issue is going to disappear. Our archives are on our YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com/spacedoutradio, and we'll be able to allow you to listen to our shows for free. We don't charge for those. Just do me the favor, just hit that subscribe button. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Dolichocephalic. Dolichocephalic is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to check out our website, it's spacedoutradio.com, where we got a plethora of features for you. Rock out to some Bubblefoot, shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, read up on the encounter online, or watch great videos from UFO Seekers, Contact TV, and so much more. Victor Viggiani from Zland Communications is our guest tonight. He will be the MC and one of the speakers at Alien Cosmic Expo, June 22nd through the 24th in Toronto, Ontario. We're talking Canada's role in UFOs and disclosure. Victor, welcome back.
Great to be with you, Dave, and welcome to all of our listeners out there.
Exactly. I love it. Thank you so much. Victor's going to be with us one more hour, and then Everett Thiemer is going to come in for hour number 3, where we're going to continue some disclosure talk and give you guys an update on what we're going to be doing coming up with the new look show once the studio is built up. So I look forward to talking to you guys about that as well. Now, Victor, right before the break, we were talking about who in government really knows about the UFOs. If you're saying that even the Prime Minister doesn't know or doesn't care, is it CSIS? Is it the Canadian military that's holding these files tight? Where are they? We know they exist. Who's holding on to them?
Well, let's just back up a bit here for a second. Let's talk about the politicians at the lowest possible level. Politicians whose bums are in the seats, with the 310 seats that are in the federal government. I'd venture to say that none of them have any knowledge, access to, or even interest in this whole issue. Now, some of them might have a closet interest. That could be something. There were a few in previous governments that had a various kind of interest in it, but no real serious need to bring it forward. And if you move up to levels of governance in terms of ministers, I would figure that the Minister of Defense would be not just the current one, but all ministers of defense would have access to files and to incidents relating to what NORAD calls, and if you know what NORAD is, the North American Aerospace Radar System, jointly operated by the United States and Canada. They're a parallel organization. The NORAD files and the NORAD manner of dealing with what they call tracks of interest, TOIs, or unknown tracks. They don't use the word UFOs. They use the word TOIs or unknown tracks or just unknowns. And if you go through the 9,500 files, excuse me, that's the nomenclature that you run into. Now, in 2014, I made an access to information request to the Canadian government, to the Ministry of Defense, and they sent me 116 pages. And what I asked them for was all reports of jets that were scrambled to chase UFOs and any other information that they had on UFOs. And they sent me 117 pages. And I'll tell you, it was very, very, very interesting. Most of them were reports, just ordinary citizen reports. Uncle Frank and Aunt Martha are sitting out in the back porch, and they see a light in the sky. They call the police, and the police say, send a letter to the government, and they do, and the government has the letter, and they report it, and that's the end of it. There's no big deal. But other reports, these ones from intelligence committees, from air traffic control reports, pages and pages of air traffic control reports on a minute-by-minute basis, daily basis. These logs in. And when they use the term UFO, seen by pilot at 007 hours, whatever it happens, Zulu, and still investigating. And you move on through the pages, all these redacted pages. They continue to use the term UFOs. NORAD doesn't, but the air traffic control reports do. And I counted 27 references to UFOs within the air traffic control reports. Okay? Now, who has access to these things? I do, because I asked for it, and they gave it to me. So these files are sitting someplace in the Department of National Defense, and all you have to do is ask for it. And I was brazen enough to do it, and I got 117 pages. I could probably get more if I asked the right question. And all you have to do is frame and ask the right question. Because if you don't ask the right question, they come back and say to you, well, your request is not specific enough. I had 3 separate requests before I got to the point where I said the right words that they sent me the right documents. Do you understand what I'm saying? It took me 3 times to define what I wanted, because I never got the right language to begin with. So that's how restrictive this whole thing is. So in answer to your question, who has them? NORAD has them for sure. They absolutely have them for sure. And the 6 pages that I have are devastating. This is an air traffic control report out of Comox Air Force Base, where it shows line by line, minute by minute, second by second. It goes hour, minute, and seconds as to what these CF-18s were tasked to do. And what happened was, in 2001, September 2001, 2 CF-18s were tasked out of Comox Air Force Base to chase 3 UFOs, or as they're called, unknowns, and they took off, and they went to 35,000 feet, and they chased these things. And you know how fast these jets go. These jets can go 700 miles an hour. These 3 UFOs, or unknowns, outpaced these jets by miles. They just couldn't catch up with them. Okay? And then what happened after that is a medical evacuation jet, an LR-35 jet out of Anchorage, Alaska, was in the same flight pattern, the same flight area. And they also saw these 3 UFOs. They made visual contact, and it says it right in the air traffic control report. Visual contact was made, but we could not keep up with them. And that's what the LR-35 pilot said. We could not keep up with them. And then further down in this report, it said CF-18s in pursuit of targets. 90 seconds to targets is the next line, and then the next line after 2 redacted lines. Interestingly enough. Contact made, CF-18s, contact made at 35,000 feet. And then more redacted lines. So the question is, contact made. What did they contact? At 35,000 feet. And that's all they said about it. So it's very questionable as to these redactions really indicate that they don't want us to know certain things. Was there gun camera information there? We don't know. If there was gun camera video taken at the time, that would be telling. It would be similar to the Pentagon UFO videos. It would be if in fact there were gun camera files there. So we know that NORAD has information like this. So in a parallel sense, what NORAD is doing is admitting to me as a citizen that jets chase these things all the time. Now, the next thing that happens is that I make another request, and I want more information about this whole stuff. And I get sent back a letter, okay? And that letter is really interesting. It's from the NORAD commander in Colorado, Peterson Air Force Base. It's got the name of it, 250 Vandenberg Street in Peterson Air Force Base. And it talks about the requests that I make. And it says that the request for unknown track reports identified by the U.S. FOIA request to U.S. Northcom reference X number, okay, is classified. Documents that are released are secret, relating to U.S. and Canada cannot be released as an exemption of, I'm reading from this letter, as Exemption 15 applies. And then it protects the disclosure of any of this information about unknown tracks. And then down further, and knowing full well that I have in my back pocket, David, I have all of the reports from the Ministry of Defense and NORAD about CF-18s chasing these things. Unknowns, okay? So I've got them. I've got the files. They sent them to me. They sent them to me. And then what they say is, listen to this one. Additionally, the release of any details regarding unknown track reports and TOIs would affect the national security defense of the United States and Canada, and improper or unauthorized disclosure of this information is an offense under the Security Information Act. It also contains information affecting the national defense of the U.S. within the meaning of the espionage laws, Code Title 18, Section 793 and 794. Law prohibits the transmission or revelation of information contained in any records on unknown track reports in any manner to an unauthorized person. So do you know what they're saying there? They're telling me that I have information of unknown tracks that they sent to me. They sent it to me. The Ministry of Defense here in Canada sent it to me in the coterminous operation called NORAD. I have these documents, and this letter is telling me that I possess them, and B, I've transmitted these unknown tracked information to every media that I know of. So I am in violation of the Espionage Act of the United States of America.
Even though NORAD sent it to you.
And no, NORAD didn't send it to me. No. What happened was the ministry, I requested this of the Ministry of Defense here in Canada, and they gave me the NORAD report. So NORAD has them in the Canadian file system, and the Canadian file system sent them to me. Now, did someone make a mistake in the Ministry of Defense here in Department of Defense here in Canada? Did they make a mistake in sending them to me? Should they not have sent them to me? Because in fact, me being in possession of these files regarding TOIs and unknown tracks, I'm in violation of the Espionage Act. So somebody screwed up at the Department of Defense that I am A, in possession of these things, and B, I've distributed them to everybody and their brother in the media. I've put them up. They're on my website. So that's what I said at the National Inquiry into UFOs in 2016, the inquiry that we had. I stated categorically that I have these documents and I'm distributing them to you, the media, and to the public that were there, and I dare the United States government to indict me, to charge me on distributing this information. I dare them to do it. Now, of course, I haven't heard anything about that, but that's what I did. Because, in fact, this letter tells me that I've got files that I shouldn't have, and I'm distributing them. So I'm in violation of the Espionage Act. And I love it, David. I just love it.
Have you tried crossing the U.S. border since you got that information?
Oh, gosh. We've driven to Florida and Hilton Head to Gulf. God, I can't tell you how many times.
One of the questions I do want to ask you, because I found
Before you go on. Yeah. Does what I said just make sense?
It totally makes sense. It totally makes sense in regards to it, because, I mean, you shouldn't have those. And even though the U.S. government says you're in violation, the Canadian government or the Canadian military gave them to you.
That's right. And I know you want to ask another question, but I could just finish off this letter.
Yeah.
Here's what the commander said at the very end. They talk about exactly what I just said a moment ago. Okay, but then the very last paragraph says, however, the NORAD commander, I'm reading directly from the letter, David. However, the NORAD commander has approved the release of the following information regarding tracks of interest, TOIs, and unknown tracks. The yearly average in the past 5 years has been 1,800 TOIs and 75 intercepts, period. End of quote. You figure that one out. 1,800 tracks of interest and 75 intercepts. So what is the 1,800? Are they UFOs? Are they, meteors? Are they weather balloons? And what are they intercepting? And who's intercepting them? Are jets intercepting them? Are these things just sort of, it's okay, Rocky, don't worry about it. It's only a balloon. Or it's only a geese. Or it boggles my mind. It boggles my mind.
I'll tell you something interesting that this will be actually the first time I shared this on the show. One of the questions I had when the first video, the Tic Tac video, came out was there was a view from the head-up display that didn't look very accurate. Okay, that To the Stars had released. And I actually went on Facebook and joined a CF-18 Hornet Facebook group. And I actually had a current pilot, I won't use his name, message me privately. He was literally 6 months into his tour of duty on a CF-18 Hornet, and he had told me that absolutely nothing had been discussed with him or his new squadron about anything to do with UFOs. In fact, he was quite shocked that it wasn't as of yet.
Interesting. Yep, I think there's probably a level of seniority that some of those pilots might go through, but I would love to know the context about how those CF-18, how the Hornets were up there during the Tic Tac videos and the other two. I would love to know the context as to why they were up there to begin with. Was this stuff tracked on radar and then they were sent up, or they were just sort of in sort of their own flight time and just doing this, and all of a sudden this thing shows up. I'm wondering what the context of the whole situation was. So, and that's why I'm not totally enamored by the whole video situation. But what I am very concerned about is why Luis Alessandro quit, first of all, and why this $22 million was dedicated to an investigation. So, I mean, it's a really hard nut to crack. But I think we have to take it at face value. Something went on. The Pentagon released this. And either there's two things that I believe about this whole Pentagon release. Number one, it really happened, okay? Or number two, what they've done is they've used something that the CIA calls limited hangout. And what that term means is that the CIA has situations where they will throw information out at the public and sort of say, well, here's this and here's that, and take it for what it's worth, and then they let it stay out in the general public for a little while, and then it just submerges. You never hear about it again. And that's exactly what's happened with this situation. It's gone out there. The videos have gone out there. Alessandro has said what he said publicly on YouTube, etc. But we don't hear any more about it, and that concerns me greatly. Nobody else, other than the New York Times and Leslie Kane and her associate author of the article, nobody else is following up on this. And that's the way this crazy stuff operates. You get this really intense amount of information. It gets thrown out at the general public for what it's worth. Oh, it's about UFOs, and the next day it becomes, people are wrapping fish in the newspaper that's printed on. So that's the way the media operates in the United States. And so I think that's why I'm kind of skeptical as to why this information came out in the way that it did. But I'm convinced, bottom line, somebody or some group within the Pentagon wants this stuff out. I don't know why, and we have to find out. And that's why I think this whole issue is probably one of the benchmarks in disclosure that we'll look back at and say, hey, we should have paid attention to this a little bit more back in 2016.
I want to change topics a little bit here because we still have so much to go through. But Victor, I'm sure you were much like I was when earlier this year, back around April 1st, and I thought it was going to be an April Fool's joke, the Canadian Mint released a new coin in the shape of a guitar pick of a UFO incident going back to May 20th, 1967, when Stephen Mahalik, near Falcon Lake, Manitoba, actually had his clothes burned by the beam of light coming from a UFO. Now, in Canada, we don't really celebrate Shag Harbor outside of Shag Harbor. We don't, not like Roswell, where everybody talks Roswell. And I was very shocked that people from the Mint were actually saying this story is a part of Canadian culture. I don't see it as a cultural event in Canada. Maybe I'm in the minority here, but I don't see it as a cultural event. I see it as a very strange circumstance that our government has never, ever really addressed, yet here they approved this coin when we're right in the heat of disclosure or confirmation going on in the United States.
Okay, well, the story of the coin is really interesting because as soon as it came out, it was worth what? It was like $125 you could buy it for, and they sold out like in hours or days, and now they're valued like $500 each.
Last time I saw it was about $750.
Yeah. In any case, so I missed out on it because I didn't buy one, and but missed the boat on that one. But when I heard this come out, and being very familiar with the case that you mentioned, it with Stephen Mihalik, and having investigated it myself and read the RCMP report, it's volumes. There's volumes written on this thing. So what I decided to do was call the Canadian Mint. And so I took it upon myself to call the Canadian Mint, and you go through 4 or 5 people to get to who might be able to talk about this whole thing. I eventually got to one of the coordinators of communication. His name was Steve Reed, and I said, "Mr. Reed, my name is Victor Viggiani. I'm calling on behalf of Zland Communications. What can you tell me about this coin, about this UFO coin?" And I'll tell you straight up, sir, that I'm a UFO investigator. And I need to know why the Canadian Mint is pressing a coin in the shape of a teardrop or a guitar pick, as you said, and about UFOs, because this is a very serious matter. And he said, "Oh, thank you for calling." And I said, "What's the rationale?" And so what he said was, there's a committee of people at the Mint that go through events, like the way they pick stamps, who do they put on stamps? They authorize certain people as to being sort of representative of a Canadian cultural event or situation where they put them on a stamp. It's the same thing with coins. So what they do is they describe different events. They list they have a short list of different events, and somehow this whole event in Manitoba it was in the top 3, and this committee chose the UFO event. And I said, "Why did you choose the UFO event?" He said, the committee thought it was of cultural interest. And so I said, "Now wait a minute. Okay, let's back up again here. There's a huge amount of secrecy about this whole issue of UFOs, and everyone knows it in Canada. And I'm trying to be as straight up with this guy as I possibly can. And he's very kind of naive about the whole UFO issue. I could tell that right off the top. And he kept on saying, I said, "Well, there's secrecy around this stuff. The government, there's people in the government that know about it. NORAD knows about it. And now the Canadian Mint is authorizing the pressing of a coin about a UFO event." He said, "Yes, we thought that it was just a cultural event." He kept on repeating that time after time. It's like banging your head against a wall, David. It's just one of those things. He wouldn't relent and say, "Oh, maybe you're right. Maybe there is something about this UFO." He didn't capitulate. So it was really interesting to see. So I said, how far up the ladder does this go? Like, where does this originate? Like, where do you get the funds to do this? The Minister of Finance authorizes it. He is the one who ultimately authorizes the funds to print this coin. I said, "Oh, it goes up to the Minister of Finance that authorizes the printing of a UFO coin." He said yes. So I mean that is sort of interesting to see how far it goes up the ladder in terms of official agencies and the level of disbelief or the level of naivete that goes on to say, "Yeah, let's go ahead and print a UFO coin." And I think that's exactly what happened. I really don't think that there's any kind of clandestine or subversive or under the table references to disclosure or whatever. I don't think so. Now, there could be. Maybe it's their way of saying, hey, folks, there's something to this UFO issue. But I think these people are not that sophisticated, Dave. They just did this because of cultural reasons, and they figured it would get a coin out there that they could sell for $125 and eventually be worth $750, like you said. So, that's my take on it.
Maybe I'm wearing a little bit too much tinfoil, Victor, but I find the timing with what is happening in the United States with the New York Times articles and everything revolving around Luis Elizondo and the pressure. I could see it coming through where these people are like, hey, are you watching this UFO stuff in the United States? Are you buying it? Do we have any incidents in Canada? And then coming across Stephen Mihalik, okay, I could see where they would present that. But it still had to go to the top authority, which the Ministry of Finance in Canada is probably a larger portfolio for our American listeners. It's a larger portfolio than it is the Ministry of Defense, or you would call it the Secretary of Finance and the Secretary of Defense. So
in the States, yeah,
in the United States. So up here, the role is reversed, where finance is bigger than defense. So it really caught my attention, because we're not just talking with some, ministerial hack here who just signs off on a piece of paper without reading it, Victor.
Well, the term that I use here, David, is converging lines of evidence, and you just mentioned it inadvertently yourself. When you take a look at all of the information that we have with respect to the UFO issue here in Canada, or even just generally internationally in the States, if you take a look at disparate pieces of information like the coin, okay, like the NORAD documents that I have, like the 9,500 UFO files that are residing in the Library and Archives Canada website, like the CIA documents. And if you take a look at all of those different, apparently disparate pieces of information, pieces of a puzzle like we referred to earlier in the program, and once you look at how those lines of evidence converged and point to the fact that the UFO issue is a central part of some of this information coming forward to the public. And if you assemble it properly, if you do it the right way, and I think that's what we're doing right now in the program, and that's what I think good UFO researchers do, is you assemble these converging lines of evidence, and you come up with the truth. You come up with the reality that the government, and here's what I say, the government knows about UFOs, and why don't we? That's my position. They know about it, and why don't we? And all the information out there points to the fact of exactly what you're saying, is that I think that it goes up the ladder to a point where, and here's my speculation, and whether the Minister of Finance knows it or not, he may be giving us a wink-wink, kind of thing. This issue is something of importance, and we wouldn't have chosen it just for cultural reasons, I think.
And that's exactly my point. That's exactly my point. I don't see this as a cultural thing. When I think cultural, I'm surprised we don't have a 2002 coin from the Team Canada winning the Olympics for the first time in 50 years. That's a cultural event for our country.
Why would they choose the UFO thing? Yeah.
Exactly. And that's exactly my point. And to me, the way our Canadian humor works, going back to the land of, John Candy and Eugene Levy on SCTV, the way I see it is that's such a backhanded Canadian slapstick comedy that is going to fly over most people's heads, that why not? They know they can get away with it.
Mm-hmm. But to the more perceptive people, they know why it's happening the way it is.
Did anybody or yourself ever file any paperwork to the Minister of Finance in regards to why this coin was issued?
I was going to. It's one of those things. I just got so much to do with this. The whole coin thing really didn't hit me flat in the head as being something that I needed to pursue. I guess I could have done it, but I felt that I might have gone down a rabbit hole that would have taken me far too much time and effort to get any kind of answers. But what we have done, though, and if people want to go onto the Canadian Research Council on UFOs that MUFON and I have just struck, we are doing that kind of work with the Minister of Defense and the Prime Minister. So we are asking them direct questions. Now, the coin thing didn't come up. You know, I didn't feel personally, and we talked about this with the MUFON people. We had to decide: do we go after the Minister of Defense and the Minister of Defense and the Prime Minister about the NORAD event, which is extremely incisive. Do we go after them about why there's 9,500 UFO files on Library and Archives Canada? Okay, and what's this whole thing about the silence of your government on the fact that you've got all this information? And there's no mention of it in any documents, parliamentary documents within Parliament. The House of Commons has never made any overt statements about this. With all of the files that are there, no one has made any kind of statements from the government to address the issue of UFOs. So we figured that those three things were a little bit more incisive, a little bit more challenging to the government than a coin. We could have included it, but actually I wrote the letter before this thing happened. So we are challenging the government on those three aspects, and we've sent letters to, I've sent letters to the entire cabinet, okay, to selected members of Parliament and to the Minister of Defense, got a response from him, and to the Prime Minister of Canada about A, inviting them to the conference, and B, asking them questions and responding to why there's 9,500 UFO files and you've never talked about it, and what's this all about with NORAD. So we are challenging the government, and I think at the Alien Cosmic Expo, I'm going to make that a little bit more overt, a little more plain, and make a public statement about why we're doing what we're doing. So, I mean, the coin thing, I think, is, it could turn out to be like a hidden little gem. It really could be. But at the time, it just didn't seem to be as important as I think it is now.
Moving on here, disclosure, which we've kind of touched on the Canadian government side, has been very prominent the last 7-8 months since the New York Times article about that. And right. What we haven't got into yet is what Canada's role in this is. Is it just to be the silent partner that the United States needs in order to gain more access? Or do we actually have a defined role in this?
In NORAD?
In UFO disclosure.
Oh, I see. That's a really tough question. If you look at it from the point of view of what the Pentagon is doing, I have to imagine, and the release that they put forward about the UFO investigation program from 2007 to 2012, $22 million. You have to kind of imagine, or have to think, that the Canadian government or some factions within the military or intelligence agency departments have to be discussing, or at least thinking about, what's going on here. Why is the Pentagon doing this? And so it could be something that the Pentagon has done that has thrown things into some sort of level of confusion, especially within Canada, because Canada admitted that the Ministry of Defense admitted at the time, back in 1953, I think it was, that they will follow the United States Air Force lead on playing down UFOs. But all of a sudden, that policy is no longer valid because the Pentagon has come forward to say we've investigated it. Okay, and there's good reason to believe that these things could be craft from off-world planets. I mean, they've all but admitted that. So I think there's a level of confusion within the Canadian government as to what to believe. Now, what's NORAD doing about it? And if you understand what NORAD is there's two separate parts to it, but they work as a communication group. And I would imagine that NORAD in the States and the commander there and the commander here could be at odds as to why are you doing this stuff? What's going on here? Why is the Pentagon talking about this? So I'm going to guess that there are some deep discussions going on in the back rooms as to why the Pentagon is doing it and questioning the whole issue of the UFO phenomenon. And NORAD's saying, okay, guys, you know what? The policy's been we send up these jets, we chase them, we don't file any formal reports, we just put them in the back seat here and file them in the database, and now all of a sudden the Pentagon is saying, you guys have been talking about this stuff for 5 years? I think there's a level of confusion about what's going on. So Canada's role, I think they're totally confused. And that confusion could be a good thing. That confusion could be something that we could take advantage of and exploit to ask them and say, okay, NORAD, fine, that's great. Your coterminous operation, NORAD, both of you have admitted that you send up jets to chase these things, and your Pentagon associates have admitted that they've sent up jets too. What's going on? And that's a perfect opportunity for the media to jump in. And that's why I'm going to be exhorting people like Anna Maria Tremonti to ask those kind of questions in public. So you see where the hand-in-glove situation comes in here. Because we can take advantage of the confusion that may be happening within Canada and its role in disclosure, or I'd like the word acknowledgement better than disclosure, saying that, yeah, something's going on here. So I think we have to do a better job of exploiting that whole confusion that perhaps may be occurring within our Department of Defense and within NORAD. I'm speculating here.
Do you think the Canadian government has any say in what is going on, or maybe could be the country to actually disclose?
Well, that was my whole point earlier. It's exactly what I was saying to you earlier. I think that exactly what you just said, because the United States government is being so, close to the vest in this whole issue, and Canada being the relatively open society that we like to think it is, there's a good possibility that confusion that's going on could be exploited by people like myself and you, and then in turn the media to say, listen, there's a big story here. The Pentagon released this stuff, and now NORAD has given us information that there's 1,800 tracks of interest being followed over a 5-year period on average. That's 1,800 per year over 5 years. That's a lot of unknown tracks. And you can't tell me they're all just flocks of birds or meteors and CF-18s chasing, geese at 35,000 feet. So, I mean, it's something that I think that we could take advantage and exploit, because the Canadian theater of media could be ripe for this kind of information. I really feel that in my gut and in my soul, David. I really do. And it's just, what it's contingent upon? It's people like you and I making a good case to the media, making a good, intelligent, rational case, not a conspiratorial perspective, not a, oh, please tell us what's going on in a sort of purgatorial, on bended knee request. No, we want information. We want you to acknowledge what we know. We know what you know, and you know that we know it. So tell us what you know. Acknowledge it.
But in the United States, there are a lot of believers out there who believe that the United States government is holding back some sort of technology, some sort of future process of, maybe it's free energy, maybe it's cures to diseases like cancer. People will believe absolutely anything, that they hear about it. They're a very much more open-minded society in the United States comparatively to us up here. Do you believe then that anybody in Canada, whether it's the military, whether it is, anybody, has benefited from any potential ET technology that could be on Earth?
That's a really good question. I don't know if there's been any kind of overt or even covert investigation of the whole issue of what you talked about in terms of the technologies and the free energy. And the reason I say that is because I don't think we have here in Canada the same sort of experimental capabilities and financing that the United States has. But I do know for a fact that either out of Area 51 or other secret installations, that this technology has been in fact experimented with. The whole idea of the quantum mechanics or the quantum physics related to the quantum vacuum and the so-called free energy that's embodied within the quantum vacuum. And for those that aren't familiar, and I'm not a physicist, but I've had Hal Puthoff explain it to me directly, that this energy, this so-called energy, this free energy that you're talking about, that Nikola Tesla actually discovered decades ago, is ubiquitous throughout the quantum vacuum of space, and that how he explains it, how Puthoff explains it, is that one cup, and if people are sitting down listening to this, if we could coalesce 1 cup of this energy, it could boil and evaporate all of the oceans on the planet.
That's insane.
It's insane. It's absolutely insane. Mm-hmm. Okay? So, I mean, take that for what it's worth, but that's the power of this stuff. So, in essence, what they're saying is that these so-called UFO craft are using that kind of quantum mechanics or quantum physics or free energy to move their craft within the cosmos. Now, whether that's from point A to point B, planet to planet or wherever to wherever, and moving it at or beyond light speed, we don't know. Warping space and all of that kind of technology, or interdimensional travel. I mean, it's an open book. It's just a complete wild card. So if we can conceive that this free energy is what it is, all bets are off. Anything is possible. So when you talk about the reasons why the UFO ET issue is being hidden, I believe in essence it is because of the free energy issue. And if the UFO issue is disclosed or acknowledged, at some point in time, David, they will have to admit, people will have to admit, the experts will have to admit that these UFOs in fact use this kind of energy. And what will that do to the oil industry? Overnight, cascade failure. If there is a possibility that this free energy issue could be accepted as viable, it will eliminate the use of fossil fuels and nuclear energy. Now, who would be against that? Line them up. Everybody from Exxon to Petro-Canada would be against that. The pipelines, it would become an anachronism if that in fact is something that's put forward. So there's every reason to believe that the issue of free energy is one of the reasons why the UFO issue is not coming forward, because the pressure tactics by international consortiums, oil consortiums, and I believe this firmly, they are involved in the cover-up too. So, this is not just a simple issue of believing if UFOs are real or not. There's much more to it than that. So in Canada, the technology is not even being pursued. But the information that I have from some people, and I visited Area 51, and I talked to people that were employed, not at Area 51, but Los Alamos Laboratories. And they told me directly that this electrogravitic and antigravitic technology is being used currently on the wing edges of B-1 bombers. So what they're doing is they're getting the technology, this so-called electrogravitic stuff. They're lining it. They're lining the wing edges, the leading wing edges of the stealth craft. And there's the electrogravitic capacity of what they're lining these edges with sends out a message to the molecules ahead of the plane to get out of the way because I'm coming through, and it doesn't create a sonic boom, allowing the jet to move faster and faster. And that's just absolutely mind-blowing, that this free energy electrogravitic capacity of this energy system can be used on our own current aircraft to enhance the propulsion systems that we have, to send out messages to molecules ahead of the jet to get out of the way because I'm coming through, and lessening the density of the air so these jets can go faster. And that's the essence of what goes on with the way these things move through space and time. And that again is something that most people would say, Victor, what have you been smoking? Kind of thing. And it's this is not something that I'm saying because I think it's true. I've been told this, and I've seen the investigations that this is in fact what they're doing with the leading edge and on an experimental basis with the B-1 bombers.
It is such a sad sight, though, seeing where Canada stands on this when it wasn't too long ago, just 50 years ago, where, with the Avro program, Canada was one of the leaders in aviation technology going forward, to where the United States was actually looking to say, hey, how are you getting to those speeds? How are you getting that level of advancement? And it was just absolutely wiped out. I think we traded it for a couple of hockey team franchises and a couple of wrecked submarines.
Well, I'm sitting in my office right now, and I have a picture of the Avro Arrow sitting right in front of me. And as a kid, I saw the Avro Arrow fly over Downsview in Toronto several times. And the picture that I have here in front of me, it's a majestic machine, an absolutely majestic machine that had capabilities that nothing in the American Air Force had at the time. And the Orenda engines that it had two huge Orenda engines with thrust that could put anything to shame within the United States Air Force. And the dynamics with which the Eisenhower and Diefenbaker governments collaborated to end the Aero program was the death knell of our technology. And if this program had continued, we would be, at this point, a leader in aerospace technology, which we're not right now. So you go back to, Eisenhower and Diefenbaker, and what the rationale was and how that happened, I have no idea. But the only thing Canada has done instead of that program is some of the aerospace activity they've done with the Canada Arm and helping the shuttle become more effective, but Bombardier and all of that. But it's a pittance compared to what we could have been if Diefenbaker had stuck to his guns.
It really is. And it almost seems like the entire tide had turned. That gave the U.S. pretty much the ultimate power on North American soil. And trust us, we're not picking on the U.S. when we say that. Canadians are extremely thankful to have the brothers and sisters of the South, to take care of us in case anything really, truly horrific happened on this side of the border. But nonetheless, to kill an industry like that, where it was so advanced and so ahead of its time, it really sucks. And how that ties into the field of ufology is you have to wonder, what else are we giving them? What else are we as a nation giving the United States? I realize we're a team, okay? We are a team. I get that, and I love that about our nations. Okay, but in the end, there always has to be a little bit of selfishness.
Yeah, well, I think that what occurs here is that the United States, as it sits and as it exists and has existed for over 200 years, realizes there's a huge body of land north of the 49th parallel that they don't have access to, and they have to, politically and even internationally in terms of law, respect that land and do what they have to do to get along with the people that inhabit that, the 35, 36, 37 million people that are here. I mean, they can't come in and tromp all over our land. They respect the borders. But I think they know that when push comes to shove, if things really got desperate, it really got to a certain point where they had to make a move, that the United States would come in and trump any card that we have. I believe that firmly. Now, it may not be done in a militaristic way, but it could be done in a political way. And I think that's what's happening right now with the Trump administration and the battle over tariffs that they're having with Mr. Trudeau. I mean, and it really is kind of instructive to see the United States president, attack our prime minister by saying, "Wasn't it you guys that came down here and burned down the White House?" I mean, it's just gorgeous. It's an absolute. It's a testimony to his ignorance. In any case, the point that I'm trying to make is that I think the United States respects us and understands.
Hold on, that Trump line was brilliant. It was brilliant. I mean, he couldn't come out and call our prime minister, a pansy or an idiot or something along those lines, much like everyday Canadians do, or just a punchline joke. He can't say that. He had to come up with something clever, so he did. And I'm not a Trump fan. I'm not a big Trump fan, but I can tell you this: I thought it was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the G7 conference coming up in Quebec. It'll be really interesting. My big worry is that somehow this individual called Trump, who they call the president, is going to somehow find out about this UFO issue and really screw things up. I'm desperately afraid. I'm desperately afraid of that. In any case, that we're on a tangent here.
Victor, we got about 90 seconds left with you, my friend. I would love you to, if you could break down the Alien Cosmic Expo, June 22nd to 24th in Toronto, your role in that, and where people can find your website.
Okay. Essentially, the Alien Cosmic Expo happening up here in Toronto, June 22nd, 23rd, 24th at the Marriott Hotel in the Airport Strip. All you have to do is Google Alien Cosmic Expo, and you'll see a list of speakers. There's, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Stu Bundy and I counted them yesterday. I think there's 18 different speakers. The Friday, the 22nd, is devoted entirely to the abduction phenomenon, where the people who have had experiences would be meeting in a separate area of the hotel and talking about their experiences. And then the Saturday and Sunday will be the other speakers on a variety of topics, and it goes from 9 o'clock in the morning till about 5 in the afternoon each day. I will be emceeing the event. I'll be presenting. I think it's on Sunday afternoon. Richard Dolan will be there. Your guest, I think, is it tomorrow? Are you having Richard on?
Yeah, tomorrow Richard will be on the show.
Yeah. Richard will be there. And so we're really looking forward to it, and it'll be a move that we think will invite the media. We have one media organization coming, the Chin radio station here in Toronto, our multicultural station. So they'll be attending the conference, and we hope to have more media there. And you can find out more about Zland Communications just by Googling Zland Communications, ZLAND Communications, and you'll come up with our website, our news blog, and you'll be able to get in touch with all the current issues, editorials, press releases that Zland Communications deals with.
Victor, thank you so much for being on Spaced Out Radio tonight. Really appreciate you chatting with you again, my friend. We will do it again very soon.
For sure. It's been an absolute pleasure, and good luck to you, David, in your
Thank you.
launching of your computer system and all the things you're doing to help this cause along.
Appreciate
Take care, brother.
Victor Viggiani from Zland Communications. Coming up in hour number 3, Everett Thiemer from the Encounter Online. We got a little bit of a show change coming up very soon. We're going to tell you all about it. And the thought of the day after this. Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
The first annual Caribou Paracon is happening September 28th to 30th in the 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Brought to you by the Canadian Society of Questers and Spaced Out Radio. Come listen to our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Elizabeth Anglin, Paisley Town, Mike Moran, Eric Cooper, and more. It's a 3-day supernatural adventure at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Tickets for the weekend are $150 Canadian. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch? Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017. for your 20% discount today.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
We are lighting the void on Saturday nights on Spaced Out Radio. Hey, this is Joe Roop, and I'm hanging out in SOR headquarters every Saturday night, bringing you the latest news when it comes to the weird and strange. Bigfoot, occult, UFOs, ghosts, and everything in between, I got you covered. You can tune in to SpacedOutRadio.com starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. Come travel into the void with us on Spaced Out Saturdays.
Not ready for bed on Saturday night? Right after Spaced Out Saturdays, hop on over to S4 with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S4, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S4. We get to the heart of the matter, of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S4 starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on SpacedOutRadio.com.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
The Call of the Wild is in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is one of the hottest bars and restaurants in the city. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose will rock you like a hurricane all night long. Great food with everything on the menu at $6.95 near the corner of Nelson and Granville. Get your horns up and come rock with us. The Moose Vancouver, the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories, from alien encounters to the latest conspiracies. You won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories.
From the mile-high state of Colorado, sharing our signal around the world, I invite you to Spaced Out Sundays. Hi, I'm Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm closing out the week by taking you on a paranormal journey to the world of the weird. Ghosts, aliens, psychic phenomena, I will hit it all in your questions too. So let us highlight the paranormal for you. So come join me for Spaced Out Sundays starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, 12 a.m. Eastern, only at spacedoutradio.com.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back to the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, we have Richard Dolan coming in. We're going to talk disclosure all night long tomorrow night with Richard, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on the SOR radio network, including the Fringe.fm. And if you're looking for our archives, we store them on YouTube. Go to youtube.com/spacedoutradio for you to check them out for free. Do me a favor, though. Hit that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Dolichocephalic. Dolichocephalic is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, we got a plethora of features for you. You can rock out to some Bumblefoot, shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, read up on the Encounter online, or watch great videos from UFO seekers, Contact TV, and so much more. We want to wish Victor Viggiani a good month, as he has a lot of traveling to do for conferences coming up. Victor was our guest for the first 2 hours talking Canada's role in disclosure. His website is zlandcommunications.org. Here in hour number 3, we're going to take a little bit of a different turn, because as a lot of you know, we have been, over the last couple weeks, 10 days or so, we have been building a brand new studio here in SOR headquarters as we prepare to try and expand this show. Amy Martin from Amy on the Radio, you may recognize her from the Deep Talk Radio Network, and she is the former news girl for Art Bell. She is taking care of our syndication. In fact, she is 2 rooms away right now, building our brand new computer, and we're going to be setting up the new studio tomorrow. Carpet goes in here as well. So with the changes that we are going to be making to the new studio, we have to improve the show. We have to tighten it up a little bit. So I bring in Everett Thiemer here from the Encounter Online. Everett, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Good to have you. Appreciate that. I'll tell you,
it's
man.
Always fun. It's always fun to come on your show.
Dude, I am so itchy right now. I took my dog out during the break, and I was just mauled by mosquitoes. Like, literally, I am scratching the living hell out of myself right now. And I realize for a lot of people out there that are probably like, no, don't scratch them. It makes it worse. I don't care right now, man. I am so itchy right now. Son of a gun. I got nailed big time. Like 3 on my hand. 3 of
them. With the way you kill them, I'm surprised they don't just fly away from you in fear.
I know. I've tried absolutely everything. I've stopped wearing red because apparently red attracts them. I've stopped eating bananas because apparently bananas attracts them. I've stopped, doing a lot of things. But no.
Have you tried bug spray?
No. That works?
I don't know. We don't have mosquitoes down here yet.
Oh,
well,
it's terrible.
I saw one. So
it's terrible. Absolutely terrible. I'm just getting eaten alive. But anyways, we bring you in here to talk a little bit about the new way we're going to be doing things around here. So normally our guests come on, we bring them on right during the show. Other shows like this, in this format, what they do is they go into a news section. So basically the show starts at the top of the hour for us. It's 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time, and they'll read like 20, 30 minutes of news before they actually bring on the guest. We've never really done that up here because, from polling our audience, you guys like to hear the guest right off the bat. So that's why we bring the guest in right off the bat. However, with us going into a more terrestrial mode and planning for that, we still want to keep that fun forum around. We still want to make sure that you guys are getting the information you need right off the bat. So we are going to be adding a news section, because one of the things we've noticed is usually at the bottom of the third hour, we see a lot of the chat rooms, especially, and that's how we judge them, is by the chat rooms. A lot of people start tuning out. A lot of people start going to bed. Maybe they're tired of hearing the guest, even though the guest may be absolutely stellar. But nonetheless, you also hear it in the guest, where they're getting tired after a 3-hour run. And you hear it in their voice. Their answers get a little slower. They get a little shorter. And there is less information. So Everett and I have been talking for a while. What can we do to spice it up? So Everett, I'm going to give you the conch here. And why don't you tell the audience what we're going to be doing in hour number 3 starting Monday?
Well, sometimes we just want to shake things up. So like you said, instead of bringing news in first right at the beginning of the show, we're going to add a little news section where we bring in some of the odd stories, some of the things that have been missed. Obviously, we will cover some of the serious breaking news kind of things and some of the paranormal UFO news when that happens. But we're also going to bring in some of the stuff that is happening around the world that we miss. We're going to try and bring a little bit of fun, a little bit of debate, because frankly, off the air, when I disagree with you, that is some of the best conversations we have. And I'm hoping we can bring some of those kinds of stories where maybe you and I don't see eye to eye, but we can have a discussion about it. And just bring in, about 15 minutes or so of news, different topics that you and I can talk about, bring to the audience, and then go into your thought of the day.
Well, and that's really the big topic is, when we do news, we're not getting into political stuff. Now, if it's an election, okay, so for instance, next year, Canada holds their federal election. The year after, it'll be the United States. Of course, we'll get into the election results, but we're neither here nor there when you kind of look into that subject. It's more about trying to find those appealing subjects that are going to make you laugh, that are going to make you scratch your head, because we don't want to sound like everybody else. And that's probably the hardest part that you're going to have, Everett, trying to find those stories on a daily basis.
They just come up. They're all over the place. In fact, we're not going to get into the political stuff so much, but there is a fun story that Henry Winkler was left off of the voter rolls in California for the primaries. However, Abe Vigoda, he's still on the voter rolls, and he's actually passed on now, but he's been passed on now for about 5 or 6 years, I think. Yet Henry Winkler, who's alive and well, was not on the voter rolls. So, we're going to bring stories like that we can talk about and have a little bit of fun with, but that are still kind of important and serious.
We're going to be debating these stories in between. So it's going to be a discussion forum. It's not going to be like your regular newscast where Everett comes in and starts reading a bunch of news stories. We're actually going to be chatting about these news stories in each and every one. Everett, how do you suppose the audience will be able to participate in that type of forum? Because our fact is we always like to keep the audience involved.
I think this is a great opportunity for them to chime in their thoughts, ideas. Obviously, we'll be reading the comments, and we'll probably be able to pull a few in. It's going to be a great opportunity because, to be honest with you, I'm going to go out and search stories that I know you and I may or may not see eye to eye on. And that's going to be probably the best part. Like you said, we are going to be discussing and debating these, and this is a chance for the audience to kind of, I don't want to say pick a side, but we can stir up or create some discussion and debate in the chat rooms, maybe bring some of the comments onto our debate or our discussion, and really involve kind of the whole audience with us in the discussion.
And with that, I just want to also stress that, our last hacking situation that we had on our website a couple of weeks ago, we have been trying to debate how, with Tim Doyle, who runs our website, trying to debate how to curb that. That's also going to be changed as well, but we're also going to be changing the look of the format on the encounter. We're going to make it a little bit more newsy. We're going to have columns in there. So if a topic is scientific, we're going to be putting that in the science. But we're still going to create regular content because you, Everett, along with Abby, our other fantastic writer that we use and who is chomping at the bit to get going, we're really going to be pushing hard to get people to know that our news section, we're going to be talking about real stories, but we're going to try and create our own as well.
Exactly. And we're still going to go after some of the deeper stories. We still have some writers that are on board and just sitting tight, letting us do what needs to be done and take care of the priorities. And they're still interested in doing some research work, some other little fun stories. I hate to say it's going to be phenomenal right off the bat, but I mean, we have taken the time mostly you have taken the time to really put things in place so that we can start, once that studio is done, really start making a push and be, I think, probably one of the best alternative media sites and alternative media outlets out there.
And in reality, there is a real lack of, and you and I have talked about this so many times, there is a real lack of quality paranormal journalism out there. There's a lot of rhetoric. There is a lot of backstabbing, a lot of whitewashing of stories, a lot of people who are absolutely not really understanding what journalism is about. How do we go about being different?
The first thing that we're going to do is what we're in the process of doing, setting up a professional outlet. And with that, and with the experience that Abby has and that I have and that you have, we are able to draw a different group of writers. We're getting more than people who just want to have their work published. We're going after people who have experience and a background in some form of media or journalism. It's not somebody just picking up a pen to, get their name somewhere so they can say they did it. We have some people on board and in the background that are waiting that have real, genuine experience, and they are committed and they have an interest in these topics, and they're looking for a serious outlet, just like there are so many people out there in the audience looking for a serious outlet to find information. So I don't think it's going to be as difficult to turn it into a really good product as people may think. And I think that once we get a few things taken care of, it is going to roll right into being something that people can really enjoy.
The fact that paranormal journalism is very hard to cover, how do you find the stories on that?
You look. That's the only thing. And one of the most difficult things in covering the paranormal is sorting through all of the fake news. And that's one thing that I hope we can bring to this, is the opportunity to occasionally bring up some of these fake news stories.
Yeah.
And talk about them, and let's put them to rest.
We're going to do that every Friday.
I think that's going to be a lot of fun.
So people who don't understand, we're going to do a section on Fridays called Faux News Friday. because the word fake is just so overused. But we're going to do a section called Faux News Friday, where Everett and Abby are going to find the stupidest, dumbest, weirdest, most obtuse fake news stories that we can find, and we're going to bring them to your level. So that way, I think a part of our responsibility, whether it's Abby, whether it's Everett, is that we need to give all of you an outlet. I know a lot of you are smart. You know what BS is when you see it. You can smell it from a mile away, okay? But there's a lot of people who don't. So part of our job is education with this as well. So every Friday, we're going to have some fun. It's going to be fun for us, Everett, but it's going to be educational for a lot of people who are buying these stories that the Marine Corps, right after Christmas, invaded CIA headquarters, or we see all these CGI films of Nibiru spinning in the atmosphere over Wichita, Kansas, and the mainstream media just isn't picking this up. How could they? We're going to bring those out.
Exactly. There are so many different directions we can go with that. I mean, every day something pops up in my news feed that I just shake my head at and worry a little bit about humanity, because I know and I see the stats and I look at these things and they're being spread all over and people believe it. And some of it's out there, bizarre, like the Nibiru thing, but some of it has some plausibility to it. I mean, there are a couple of stories going around about some different food products, one of them being a particular fish, where they're saying, oh, you can't eat this because it's poison and it's a government engineered fish and it's out there designed to control the population and all of these things. It takes about 20 seconds with Google to find out that it's absolutely untrue, but nobody's doing that. And this story, the last time I looked at it, had thousands and thousands of shares and comments and people talking about how they're never going to eat this again, and the government's, engineering and trying to control the population through this. And it's time to put some of these to rest and really begin to spread the true information and the truth.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. And it's going to be something that I find entertaining. And you know what? Like I said, it shakes things up a little bit from what the majority of people out there are already doing on their program. Dennis has a question here. Dave, are you going to be adding more commercial breaks? There will be probably a 3-minute break at the bottom of the hour, because as we go terrestrial, they are going to want their break at the bottom of the hour. But what we are talking about here is, we're still going to keep the break at the top of the hour. The times may just be adjusted because we have to get a clock wheel going, so that way we stay on the top. So instead of starting at 9 o'clock Pacific, we might start at 9:06 and continue on from there. So that's kind of the way it's going to go, because we have to allow stations as they pick up our satellite feed in order to do it. Now, I know a lot of people out there may not like it. They like the small rustic cabin atmosphere of what we are doing on a nightly basis. All right? So I do understand that. I do appreciate that. And we're going to try and keep that. We are not changing the format. Everybody in the audience will still be involved. So I ask you guys to, continue with your questions if you're in the chat rooms or anything like that, but we're not going to lose that feel. I absolutely refuse to lose that feel, whether it's Everett, whether it's Abby, whether it's Preacher, whether it's Amy or Tim or whoever's helping us out. My mandate has been the show has to try and remain as much the same as possible, because that way it still sounds natural in an unnatural or a more terrestrial type environment than what our internet crowd is used to. And so, yes, we're going to be having some fun with the news. It's not going to be about, bringing hardcore serious news, but it's going to be about trying to find those stimulating questions that are out there and that people are reporting. And then every Friday we'll have some fun. If you guys as an audience want to chip in and send Everett or Abby a note saying, hey, I think this qualifies for Fake News Fridays or Faux News Fridays, send it into us. We want to hear about it. You know,
definitely. I'm really looking forward to that, because that's where we can really have some fun and debate some of these things. Although I'm a little afraid that we'll both agree a little too much, but I think that there is just so much stuff out there that we're going to have a lot of fun with that and be able to bring a lot of humor to it too.
Dennis in the chat room is bringing up a lot of points because, I mean, he's been a long-time fan and he's a fellow Canadian, so I got to be good to him. But Dennis, like I said, we're going to try and keep the show as natural as possible. We are not going along other formats. We are creating our own that's going to spin, you know. But on the flip side, I have to try, you know, on a selfish note here, guys and gals, you know, this is a lifetime commitment for me. And, you know, I have to try and make a career out of this because this is what I have chosen to do. And there are people, whether it's Everett, Abby, Amy, Tim, and all of you who want this show to continue. And that's why we're doing this. I'm a terrestrial radio guy. I've never felt really comfortable in the whole online format. Everett, you can attest to that. I've said that many a times to you. And it's something where we have I'm reading the comments, okay? I am totally reading the comments, and I give a care about every opinion that comes through here. And I think I've been honest and upfront with you guys when it comes to, you know, being very careful with how we shift the show. It is going to shift, but we have to stay true to our roots and our format, because we don't want to lose our regulars because we've pissed them off because we've done something, you know, outlandish or outrageous or made it a little bit too mainstream, if you know what I'm saying, Ev.
Oh, definitely. But we also have to put you in a position to grow a little bit, and that does involve making some changes and some compromises. The thing is that, you know, when you do 3 hours, you have, about a total of 12, 15 minutes of commercials? The average radio show on terrestrial might have a 42-minute clock or a 47-minute clock, meaning they're running, you know, almost, 15 to 18 minutes of commercials in an hour. So we're not going to be anywhere necessarily near that, but it's a lot of content. And just because we add a break or two here or there, it's still going to be a lot of fun. It'll be a chance for everybody to go grab some coffee and not miss anything, or you know, be able to take care of a couple things instead of walking away and missing something. It's going to be a change, but it's going to be a good change. It's going to provide a lot of opportunity for growth for the show to make it better for the audience. So I think everybody's going to like what's happening. It's a little bit of an adjustment, but they're going to really like it.
Well, I just want everybody to know that we are cognizant of, you know, making sure we're not stepping on our audience's toes. You know, that's the big thing. You know, I just don't want to make sure that, you know, we're not stepping on our audience's toes, because they're here for a reason. They joined us because we were giving something that other shows were not giving. So, no, Mr. Skeptic, I am not changing the name of the show, you know, to hashtag MITD. No, not going there. That is awesome, by the way. He always catches me off guard. Always catches me off guard on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. But we're going to... Oh, that's absolutely hilarious. You know, I was, you know, thinking the Kingdom of Canada or something like that. That's what we'll change the name of the show to. I don't know. But nonetheless...
that sounds familiar. I've heard something like that somewhere.
Yes. Yeah, you never know. You never know. But there are changes coming. Hey, one person that I want you to introduce to our audience here who's going to be working closely with you is one of our really good writers, Abby, because she does a lot of work behind the scenes, and I know she's been chomping at the bit to get the website up and going and running, and but I love that passion. I love that desire. She means a great deal to what we are doing moving forward. What's somebody like Abby going to be doing during the show or during the website?
Abby is a phenomenal writer. She's got a lot of talent, a lot of drive. She's incredibly eager to get things moving, and she just brings. She's done a lot of other writing. And not just in the paranormal. She's done quite a bit of blogging and things like that. And she has a great passion to make this work. She wants you to succeed probably as much as everybody else, if not more. And she brings a lot of talent, a lot of skill. And, it's her drive. It's her messaging me or letting me know that, she's wondering about this and she wants this taken care of, and when are we going to get up and running? She actually pushes me to get more done because of her drive and her passion and her desire to see you succeed. And she's going to bring an incredible amount of talent and probably an awful lot of writing. She is a prolific writer and really good at it. And I think the one thing she really brings is this whole sort of encompassing a passion. She just wants to have fun and make this work.
Yeah, and you know what? To have two capable writers of Abby and yourself, I got to tell you, that means a lot to our audience. And now Mr. Skeptic has posted in the Spreaker chat room, Dave rejected my perfectly reasonable suggestion to change the name of the show to MITD. I'm crushed. That is hilarious. I'm not even going there. But thank you for the awesome laugh, Mr. Skeptic. Goddess Michelle on Twitter says, hey, Dave, you have to pay the bills. Do what you have to do to get where you need to be. This show will still be great. The message is Goddess approved. Thank you, Goddess Michelle. Good fellow Canadian girl over there, over by Shag Harbor, Nova Scotia. It's phenomenal.
I want to get to Shag Harbor one day.
I so do. I've never been out east, like for a period of time. Like I've never been to Toronto outside of catching other flights at the airport. I've never been to Montreal. I've never been to the Maritimes, which I hear absolutely beautiful.
I just want to go to Tim Hortons.
Derek is wondering, who is on the line with Dave right now? I was away on a work call for a while. It's Everett Thiemer from the Encounter Online. Rick is asking, Dave, why didn't you ask the guests any of our questions tonight? Oh, good question, bud. Good question. To be honest with you, I had an agenda with Victor tonight that I wanted to get in, and I was trying to get it all in there. And sometimes when I'm monitoring a number of chat rooms and trying to host the show, I missed out. So that is my fault. I will take the blame for that. It doesn't happen often around here. It doesn't happen often. But we're going to make it. And no, I'm not dumping Bumblefoot Mike on Twitter and calling in Crystal Gale for my intro. Little brother is watching, is sticking with us. Little brother is watching. Anyhow, bringing this back. Go ahead.
You know what? I think Anne Murray might be available.
No, we're not going with any Anne Murray, Rita McNeil, BTO, anybody like that. Rush. Nickelback, Bryan Adams,
Justin Bieber.
Throw Drake in the garbage too. Celine Dion, throw her in the garbage. We're not going there. We're not going there. What do you do? What do you do? No, we're not going with ABBA either. We're not going with ABBA. We're just sticking with it. We're just sticking with Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal and his perfect song for us, Little Brother is Watching.
It is a perfect song, and there is no reason to change any of it.
And Mr. Bumblefoot likes it as well that we use that song. So that's always good. If it gets me backstage passes, I'll do it. Let's see. Spaced out in the Great White Northern Desert of the owner. Oh, wow. That's a good one. Spaced out in the Great White Northern Desert of the owner of the nightclub. A little bit too long, but that's workable, Jeff, as he's trying to come up with new names for the show, even though we're not changing our name.
Yeah, this is quite a tangent since this isn't even on the agenda.
Not on the agenda. Here's another one by Jeff. From the Kingdom of Canuckery. That's not bad.
I like that.
That's not bad. Not bad at all. But getting back to the news, give us a couple of examples of stories that people will be able to hear on what we are doing.
Well, we had talked about the Henry Winkler story. There's a story out there right now that we won't bring it to the news because it'll be old, but the story about the minister in Florida who was attacked by a crocodile while baptizing people. I hate to say it, but that's sickly kind of something I find interesting.
Yes, me too.
We're going to bring stories like that, the stuff that's out there that is a little dark, a little funny, and mix it with some of the serious stuff. Obviously, there will always be things we can't ignore. But really what we want to do is just bring a different viewpoint to the news and bring different information out there.
Yeah, and I think that's important. It's because we don't want to bring news that you're going to be seeing or reading on the front page of your newspaper that you're going to get for, the next 3 to 5 days in a row. Not interested in that. Not interested in that at all. Politics, we're not interested in. We're not running with it. It's about the weird and strange stories that we are going to search out, and that could go also, and it's not just weird and strange on a paranormal level, but it could be a dumb criminal,
Oh, and there's a lot of those out there, aren't there?
Well, exactly. I think of a story that comes to mind quickly here was the husband and wife duo who got busted for selling golden tickets to heaven. For $200 a piece. That's a good story. That's the type of... We want you to laugh and we want you to have fun with the news. And so we're going to be doing that, staying away from serious agendas. Now, on the flip side, Everett, because there always has to be a caveat, if another situation like, say, 9/11 happens, or a tsunami in Asia that kills 200,000 people, we have to report on that.
Oh, definitely. And in fact, at the end of the night, we'll be able to do breaking news too. There's a lot of things that happen, on the other side of the world that are impactful, and there are even things that happen overnight that are impactful. And when they come up, we will be able to bring them to the listeners. And we've done that before. We've done that with Art Bell. We were the first live radio show to basically cover the JFK documents. Everybody else had given up, and we were still there watching and waiting, and they released them a couple hours before the show, or a few hours before the show, and everybody else had kind of written it off for the night. We caught that, and we're going to continue to do things like that.
Rick is saying, is it more National Enquirer stuff? No, we're not going to have, Bigfoot mating with a gray alien in the middle of the forest of North Dakota. We're not going to have stories like that. We're not talking made-up stories here. We're talking real news stories that are going to be of interest. Let's see. Carla says, Rustic Beard Radio. Let's see. Catherine says, Dave, one thing I would love for you to inherit from Mr. Bell is the specific calls for specific people. Well, we don't want to be copycat. Here's the problem with open lines that we have. All right? I don't mind doing open lines. I don't mind doing open lines at all. You guys have to call. And for a lot of our regulars, you're so used to just typing in your questions that even when I do open up the lines, which is rare, nobody calls. Or very rarely people call. So I want you guys to know that if the phone lines are open, call in. Call in.
Does that include me? Because sometimes you hang up on me.
Well, I mean, you're different. You're different. You're one of them Illinois listeners.
Nothing wrong with Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a lot wrong with it, but you're right, I live here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? If, once we get everything smoothed out, and I also want to preface to people, give us some time to smooth it out before you make a decision. All right, that's really important, guys, is to give us some time to smooth everything out because it is going to be a little rough. We're revamping the website. We're going to be changing our logo. We're going to be creating a secondary logo of Carl. We're going to be having a store come online. We're not doing an SOR Space Travelers Club just yet. Just yet. It will be coming, though. And we'll be going into more detail about that in the future. But the big thing is, the website is going to be changing. We're going to get the encounter going again. We got to get a few more pages going to make it a lot more fun. And that's the importance right now. So once we get the logo redone, and I've got some options I got to go through, all right, but once we get the logo redone and we get our new Carl logo redone, it's going to do anything. And by all means, if you guys have any ideas that you want to bring forward and say, like I like this one from Trip, need meteor shower updates. That's something I think is great on our website. I also believe that it would be great to put the International Space Station. So all you do is you click on the app on our website, and you go on there, you type in your zip code or your postal code, and boom, it can tell you when the space station is flying over. Catherine's asking about Spreaker. Can we box Spreaker? Spreaker's going to continue for a while. All right, Spreaker's going to continue. And, is it going to be around in 2 years from now, 18 months from now, 3 years from now? I don't know. But we are going to be working on something that's going to, be good for everybody. I like Spreaker. I think it's a very neat community that we have established in Spreaker, and I really don't want to lose that, even if I do have to pay for it. But there is a lot of really cool features that are going to be coming there. So yes, if you are a writer, Everett, if there are writers listening who would maybe like to join the encounter and do some writing, how could they get a hold of you guys, you or Abby, to find out whether or not they could help on out?
Well, they could message us directly on Facebook, reach out through Twitter, email. My email is, well, you know what? I'll put it on my Facebook page because it's kind of hard to explain. But they can find us. And, if they have an idea and they maybe they aren't confident at writing, but they have a topic or something they'd really like to explore, they can send us that too. Just message message me or you, or preferably me, and let me know, and we will follow up with them.
Absolutely. And, there's so much that we have to do yet. Like I said, do me a favor, give us a couple of months here to get everything kind of going, and, we'll make it happen. We will absolutely make it happen.
And, Dave, I think the audience needs to understand, you and I have talked almost daily for hours and hours every day, and 90% of those conversations revolve entirely around what we can do to make the show better for the audience. It hasn't been, what we can do to make it this or that. It's always been about the audience. So, yeah, we might have a hiccup here or there, but everything is geared towards making it fun to listen, making it fun to be a part of. So if they give some time and they just, if they have a question, message you or me and address it. But it's really, you've put in place things to really make it a fun experience.
One of the issues I do want to address here, because I've seen it a couple of times come out, and is our Periscope feed. There's a lot of buffering, there's a lot of stuttering that is going on. And one of the things I want to mention is the computer I am using right now does not have the capability to cleanly run Periscope, Spreaker, Skype, and Twitter at the same time. It just doesn't. So with the new computer that is actually coincidentally being built right now, literally Amy is, like I said, 2 rooms over, building our new computer with high, I'm not even going to use the terms because I don't know. I'm not a computer guy. What's going to happen here is we're going to have the ability to make things happen a lot smoother. So the Periscope feed is always going to be clean. All right. The Spreaker line is always going to be clean. And it's just the way we're going to work it. It's going to be a lot smoother. But like I said, give us a couple weeks to get everything smoothed out. I got to learn a whole new technical part. And right now I'm having troubles picking out a desk that I got to pick out tomorrow. And a chair to go with that desk. Joe is saying, Dave, has Amy chained into a room building the computer? Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. I actually asked her to come on in here for hour number 3, but she is, the poor girl has literally been up since like almost 24 hours with a few hours, a few minutes here, a few minutes there. She caught 3 flights today. Like with Amy today, and we're going to go to the thought of the day here momentarily. Amy today, she left her home, caught a flight to Dallas, which was, I think, a couple hours, had an hour layover in Dallas before catching a 4-hour ride from Dallas to Vancouver, and then she had a couple-hour layover before going from Vancouver to Williams Lake. But I did introduce her to Tim Hortons today. I did. And she got herself an ice cap, but I think that buzz is wearing off right now. So we're going to, after the show, I'm going to take her to get something to eat, find some place that's open around here. I think we're down to one place. But, the big thing is, we're going to have that new computer up and running here. It's going to clean up a lot of those problems, especially with Periscope. And as things move forward here over the next few months, excuse me, I ask for patience. And I know you guys will give it to me because you guys are fantastic at like that, but there are some changes coming. It's not going to affect the quality of the show. I think we're going to vastly improve it. It's going to tighten up and it's going to sound a lot cleaner. Everett, we're going to go to the thought of the day right now. Thought of the Day happens every night at this time, where during the day we put a question on our Facebook and Twitter page, and you guys answer it. We love to get your audience involvement, so we're going to read out your answers. Today's Thought of the Day: if not the United States, which other country in the world could bring disclosure, and why? Everett, what's your thoughts on that?
I used to think it would be someone like Belgium or France, where, they were pretty open about some instances. But I kind of think that if a government discloses anything, it's it's going to be sort of an unexpected government, and it's going to be some sort of incident that they can't hide. Part of me just thinks that people are too cynical that any government releasing anything, they're going to look at it kind of questionable anyway. So I really think that it's going to be an unexpected nation where something happens, or they have some sort of proof or unintentional release of information and kind of come out of nowhere. Whether it be, one of the Asian countries, or, I would lean more towards one of the more technological countries, but I really don't know. I just think it's not going to be one we expect.
Well, about 75% of the people who took part in today's study, or question, thought of the day, whatever you want to call it, were saying Russia. They believe it's Russia and Putin. And we'll give some of the answers. Aussie Marty on Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio says Russia. They love stirring the pot. Canadian Joe on Twitter, China or Russia? Both are big. Both are powerful enough to resist any pressure the United States could threaten them with. That's always a good one. Comes down to threats. Let's go over to Facebook. Catherine, Russia. They have the clout to do so. Trinket, definitely Russians. They also do not feed their sheeple poison or put pharmaceuticals in their drinking water, so they probably lie less than the United States also. Caveat to that, she is American. All right. I don't know if I agree with the other parts, okay, but we're getting the point. And Tim jumps in. Russia, they DGAF. Don't give a bleep. Everett.
I'm surprised, and I wonder if Russia released something, would it be... What would people really say about it? Would it be put down right away? I mean, would we believe it? Would the world believe it? Russia has such a history of propaganda and spreading disinformation as much as anybody else, that would it really be believed? And I'm curious as to why so many people think Russia.
There's a few more points. We're going to get to that. Goddess Michelle on Twitter chimes in and says, China is going to bring disclosure. I don't see the Chinese doing it, but I think they're one of the three that could. Stephen says, where I live, England. Have you seen Boris Johnson? He's definitely a hybrid. That's funny. Tom jumps in. He goes, likely Russia and China. Less likely Great Britain, France, Mexico, Japan, Australia, and Canada. Least likely everyone else, included the United States. Jeff from Edmonton. Russia. Putin doesn't give a damn what you or anyone else thinks, but it would have to benefit Russia. No one is going to bring full disclosure just for the sake of doing it. If Putin wanted to pull one over, this would be a good one, Everett.
It would be. And I don't see it being Russia.
If it was Russia, we could see a lot of propaganda coming from the American side to say it's all full of crap. David jumped... Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that if Russia was going to disclose something, I see them doing it more behind the scenes to force not necessarily their allies, but some of the countries that they're aligned with to kind of, to go along with their party line. I think they would use it as a tool rather than disclose it to the world.
All right, let's get to some more response. David Ross, Canada, we are down-to-earth, level-headed people. We also have Grant Cameron, Stanton Friedman, Chris Rakowski, just to name a few serious investigators. I don't think the investigators mean much in that. No offense to the people involved. They're very, very smart people. But Michael McNeil jumps in. The countries that have released some info on UFOs have been the UK, Australia, New Zealand, Russia, Brazil, Canada, Denmark, Ireland, France, and Chile. The lamestream media didn't give these releases much attention, so I think these information releases were negligible to the public. My suggestion would have to be some Canadian official on the show who was involved with the Canadian UFO files. Also, Nick Pope, who worked for the MOD in the UK. I'd like to get a Canadian official on that. I just don't know where to even start looking for that, but I have pondered that. Charles jumps in. Kenya! They have no reason to go along with the United States denials. Chalk one up for Kenya. First time I think Kenya has ever been discussed on this show. Jeff on
And you know what? I can believe that.
Well, Jeff on Twitter is holding out for Sri Lanka.
Another one I could buy.
All right, let's get to Kevin. To preface, in my opinion, the only other country with an intelligence system that plays at the same level as the Americans and yet still has the respect of international communities to finally come clean with heartfelt apologies would be the Brits. They have been privy to many leaps in American military technology with high security bases in the UK. They spawned the OSS, the CIA's predecessor, as they shared intelligence gathering secrets with the Americans to help the war effort. They also have the technology, military hardware, supported, hold on, I'm going a little too fast, supported one another in joint military ventures, used each other's top secret intelligence for political and tactical operations. What do you think, Kev? A little too close?
No, I think being so intertwined with the U.S. and other major countries, if these governments have something to disclose, don't you think that maybe they would have disclosed it already? I mean, it seems like all of these other countries, you know, we've heard about the British MOD files now for years and years, and just like the U.S., they get released, nothing really happens, nothing really comes of it. I wonder if they're so, you know, the governments are so intertwined that in a way somebody is controlling the release, even if it's, you know, not of, you know, whatever agency's national origin. But I just don't see it. I think there's too many factors that have brought these countries intertwined. And if one of these major players had something, they would have released it, or they're intentionally keeping it quiet and they're going to continue to do so.
Well, let's finish off strong here, shall we? Carla states, a sitting prime minister or president would have to make an announcement from either Great Britain, Russia, China, Canada, or Australia. They'd be the only ones the mainstream media would take seriously. I think it's one of those, but it could be somebody smaller. It definitely could be somebody smaller. Snarkat?
Yeah,
go ahead.
No, I was just kind of agreeing, but also disagreeing. I just think it depends on the circumstances. I mean, if a UFO crashed in Cuba and it was verifiable and they disclosed it, would we take it seriously, or would we just kind of say, well, it's not Russia, it's not China, it's not England, it's not the U.S., so we can't believe it?
What about Rocket Man in North Korea?
You know, I don't think right now anything coming out of North Korea can be looked at completely truthful.
That is totally true. We're going to round it up here. Michael Freehawk, who was just on the show, states, the U.S. is the only country with this issue. The star nations are common knowledge in many parts of the world, especially Mexico. Susan gets the last word. She says, Canada. It has enough sittings and are strong enough to back it up. I don't know what that means. Help me out, Susan. Mama Susan, help me out. Everett Themer, I look forward to hanging out with you starting on Monday night.
I'm looking forward to it too.
It's going to be a lot of fun. We also want to say a big thank you to Victor Viggiani for coming on the air the first 2 hours of the show, talking disclosure and what is Canada's role in it. I know we talked a lot about Canada tonight, our American listeners. I do apologize for that. It's a Canadian thing to do, but every now and again we like to throw it in there. Tomorrow night on the program, Richard Dolan will join us. Just married a Canadian girl from Vancouver, so he's almost one of us now. We're going to be talking disclosure with Richard Dolan starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. I hope for all of you to attend. Hopefully we'll have the new computer running tomorrow night, if not for sure on Monday. We got Little Brother is Watching playing in the background from our resident guitar god, Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal. Bumblefoot rocks us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. I want to say a big shout out to everybody listening at home, in your cars, at work, wherever you may be. Thank you for participating with us tonight. A special thank you to everybody in the Spreaker chat room, everybody on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. I apologize to the Periscope crowd. It was a little rough tonight, but you guys were amazing. And, of course, the veterans in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Thanks for spreading the word. Thanks for helping us grow on a nightly basis. All of you are absolutely amazing. And that's why, together, my friends, we own the night. I will talk to you in 21 hours from now. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Enjoy your Friday, everyone. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Have a good one. Good night.
1,000 eyes are waiting for you to break. Stay in line, don't make a mistake. We're watching. We watched you for so